Did you hear Chris's idea?
Yeah.
We will adjourn it now.
Did you hear Chris's idea?
In other words, like, for example, if
Well,
you're supposed
start
to be here
drinking
at
before the
7,
meeting.
right?
Yeah.
7:03
after.
0. You see what I'm saying? Would that be cool?
It would be fun, and then somebody could go,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody has to ring a bell, so we have the exact.
The official
Can
time.
we do that? Can we have a sunny pool? So for example, it's 7 plus 3, if it was 3 minutes after 7, would get us a 0, right? 7 plus 5, it'd be a 2, you know, I mean, just kind of like a football pool, but
Ross?
like that.
But you know, I don't have a problem with the people who just heavily subsidize. I don't either. I
Time
don't. It's the most heavily used.
I have asked for
Hey, Janice, whenever Danny comes, you know, if it's really hot or really cold, you know, Danny's ready for it. I go, you know, it's kind of cold today, and he'll go, that's right. Green room where you could like, you know,
green room.
refresh before you come out for the.
Yeah. Powder up.
You should have that already.
Magic potion.
You're wrong, Dennis.
You're right, he beat Ross.
He's on the bell.
What, no tiger shirt? Signs?
No, I wore it last night.
What does that say? What does that mean?
It's a medicine.
College that my daughter coaches at.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what it meant. Thought maybe it was Latin or something.
It's a university in Tennessee that my daughter coaches at.
I thought it was like a joke.
It sounds like a foot powder.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners special meeting. Today is Thursday, September 8th. It is a little bit past 6 p.m. Actually, my watch says 6. That's a little fast, I think. Just a few announcements. If you have a cell phone, if you could put it on silent or vibrate, it would be appreciated.
That means you.
We have scheduled this meeting in the hopes that it would be a 6 to a maximum of 9 p.m. Meeting tonight. We do have scheduled meetings, 2 additional scheduled meetings for budget discussions and deliberations, and that is on Wednesday, September 21st from 3 to 6 p.m., and as well on Thursday, September 22nd from 2 to 5 p.m. Another announcement is that Mr. Cudney, who is the representative for Michigan State University, has indicated to us he's unable to make the meeting tonight. So it would be up to the commission when we get to that item, if you want to discuss the item or would like to hold on that item until the next scheduled meeting on Wednesday, September 21st, and see if we get Mr. Cudney in at that time. Those are the announcements, and we will now go with the order of business, which is the first one would be the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could stand, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will have the clerk do the attendance roll call, please.
Mr. Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas? Yep. Richardson? Maxbauer? Here. Lemkool?
Here.
Henschel?
Here.
Gilman?
Here.
Fleece?
Present.
Chairman Inman?
Here. And then if Commissioner Richardson shows up a little late, we'll...
Here he is.
Here he is, right here. So we'll just indicate he's coming in as the meeting is starting. The next item on our agenda is public comment, and I just want to, before I have the clerk read the rules, I just want to indicate that for those folks that came in late yesterday, after public comment and had to sit through the whole thing, hoping we would get back to public comment, just to accept our apologies. The intent was to try to get through the agenda, but That did not occur, obviously, and we have quite a bit yet to go with the agenda that was transferred over to today's meeting. So, keeping that in mind, we will begin the meeting with public comment. So those of you, especially those of you that came in late yesterday and were unable to speak, we would like to invite you in first, and then anyone else that would wish to speak, you're more than welcome to do that at this time. So, Clerk, if you could read the rules, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting in the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. A, any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. B, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. 1, chairperson may at his or her discretion extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay. And I also want to make an additional announcement that if any member of the public or staff wishes to speak under any of the agenda items that we have on our agenda tonight, if you would prefer to wait until we address that issue, we would take public comment first, and then we would go back to the board for discussion and dialogue as a courtesy to you. So it depends which way you'd like to handle it. So with that, do we have any public comment tonight under this section? If you do, raise your hand or come on up to the podium, state your name and address for us. Okay, hearing no indication for public comment, we will close public comment, and we will move to the next agenda item, which we completed Parks and Rec yesterday evening. So the next item is facilities, and we have Danny Brown and whoever your staff would like to come up with, and get yourself introduced. Well, that's the real boss. That's the real boss.
If you don't believe it, just ask her.
Yeah, he's the real boss.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Lane, the office coordinator.
And I'm Danny Brown, the Director of Facilities. I don't have a summary of my budget tonight, but if we need any questions answered, I'd be happy to try to do that the best I can. I was also asked to go out and take bids on the custodials. I did that. I think it's in your packet. So I'm sure that we'll have a discussion about that as well. So.
Do you want to go over that?
Pardon?
Did you want to go over that piece of it?
I can go through it.
All right.
That paper sure makes a lot of noise.
So do some of the commissioners.
Find it? It's in the,
In what section?
It's not in the facilities.
it's not
There
in
was
the
a
facilities.
handout,
Separate piece of
it was
email.
emailed yesterday. Let me start this.
Well, I
It's
don't
in
have it.
fairness to Danny, I summarized the results
All right, go ahead.
of the bids. I'm actually looking for mine in my packet too. These budget manuals tend to get a little unwieldy. But it had
Here it is.
it looks something like this.
Oh, okay.
There were 4 bids that were received. We were asking for a 3-year price. 3 of the vendors had provided a fixed price for 3 years. One vendor, the first vendor listed on this page, actually had a scheduled increase over 3 years. What I tried to do here was just summarize the key points in the bids. For example, whether they provided an amount for the labor and materials or the performance bond. One of the vendors did not provide costs for cleaning the carpets or stripping and waxing services. And then they also indicated, and I used the same format for each of the 4 bids that were received, they indicated the frequency at which the carpet should be cleaned or the stripping and waxing of the floors should be done. The 3 vendors that did provide rates for the floor cleaning services separate from their overall bid. 2 provided rates per hour, and 1 provided a rate per square foot. And so that's what's summarized on the first page of the analysis. The next page summarizes the contract costs based on the base contract, the floor services, and we estimated an amount for the various bonds because not all 4 vendors filled out that part of the bid document. And their costs are summarized in the order of lowest to highest.
Can you summarize those costs? I did not have a chance to download the email, so.
Do you want, should I make some copies?
That would be helpful, because I
Which
didn't bring mine
Commissioners
either.
do not have it?
It was on your desk last night.
It's on our desk.
It was on your desk last night, so if you have the packets you picked up off your desk last night.
There's only 5 or 6 pages. We can quickly.
I can make some more
I should have
copies.
it in here.
I'll go make-
Let's do that, but to just back up.
Okay, I got it.
To back up a few steps, though, the facilities budget consists of, there is a tab in your budget manual. It's a fairly large
Tab.
section in your manual. We start off with the general fund department, Department 265. There are revenues associated with the facilities management department. The lion's share, the bulk of the revenue is the indirect cost recovery. And then there's also the amount that we invoice the city of Traverse City for. So the first page should be the revenue. And then we're following that is the expenditures for the Department 265, which is primarily the staffing associated with the facilities management department. And then following that are the county facilities fund, which are the various facilities that the county maintains. So I didn't want to brush over that. I mean, there's quite a bit of information there, and there's also the county facilities fund is funded by 3 primary revenue sources: a fund balance, which is basically the general fund appropriation over time that we have not expended. There's a current year appropriation, and then there are various charges for services rendered or billings to the city for their share of the governmental center. But there's quite a bit of information in that tab. I didn't want to just skip over that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question for Dennis and
Sure.
and Rodine. If there is cost savings, if the board chooses to contract service, will departments that have indirect costs, such as Commission on Aging, will their cost be reduced in the budget?
If the cost to contract out services are lower than our current costs, yes, indirect costs will be reduced proportionately
Although you won't see the full effect of that for 2 years,
for 2 years.
Correct.
because it's always 2 years
All
behind.
right, all right. Thank you.
All right, so what I'd like to do is just get the basic information out.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, that's basic information, that's good information. And if we have all the basic information laid out, then I'll open it up to members of the public that wish to speak, and then we can come back and do discussion. Sonny?
I guess I was a little confused, and Dean can probably tell me. Why do we have tax revolving fund revenues under facilities management?
Part of the policy, the current policy has been to distribute $450,000 annually from the tax revolving funds for capital. So some of that...
So it's what went into the capital
Yeah,
budget?
the current distribution of that $450,000 is about half pays for debt service on the Woodmere building, and the other half goes into the county facilities.
We've been doing this for 15 years or more.
I just couldn't remember seeing fund balance.
Any other questions about the information on that issue?
Did you go through all the pages?
All right. Do you have any further
Well,
information?
yeah, I mean, we're waiting for those copies to come
Yeah, I
down, but
would-
there's about 4 pages there that he needs to go through.
Okay, all right, we can hold.
And
I have a question for Danny. And any problems with the job that's being done currently by custodial staff?
No.
I mean, generally, they're doing a good job, you think? And the inhabitants of all our buildings are happy with how clean the buildings are?
Well, we've changed a few things in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Generally happy, though.
Generally happy, yes.
Okay, what things have we changed?
Oh, we just changed the way the garbage is handled, and we put more responsibility on the employees to do that, not the custodians, but the...
Yeah, I understand that this was at the direction of this board.
Right.
Okay. How have the, not the custodians, but the other employees who now are supposed to, take their own trash out every day? I mean, how has the reaction been to that?
It hasn't been 100% positive,
Okay.
but they're doing it.
Yeah, they're not taking the trash out of the
Not out.
office. They're
No,
taking
they're
it
not
out to
doing
the main part of the office.
It's being consolidated in one
Yeah.
place, okay.
Yeah.
So, is there still trash that has to be picked up by the custodians?
Yes.
Because some people don't bother to do it?
Yes.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Danny, when I read through this budget, one of the things that sticks out in my mind is the
Yeah.
heat allocations, because it looks like we're still increasing the estimated heat costs for next year slightly. And I know that the IGC contract that you signed would have saved us approximately, by my numbers, somewhere in the $50,000 range. So I was surprised to see the heat costs were actually increasing.
Well, actually, I'll let Janice speak to this.
Sonny, what I did when I tabulated the expectations for all the utilities is I went on a 3-year average. And I actually went back and tabulated for 2009, 10, and 11 what we've spent year-to-date. And we are actually, what we asked for in 2011 compared to what we've asked for in 2012 are down 8.86%. And so we've taken into consideration the reduction because of the IGS contract, but that contract only goes right now through March. Could go up, could go down. But we actually, for instance, in 2009 spent $256,043 in heating costs alone, and in 2010 spent $214,747. So it's not only the fixed contract rate, it's also a weather variable. But
I understand, I just was surprised to see it go up because there was a significant decrease in the IGC contract this year.
well, it's down. It's down when you compare it to 2011, but that's as of right now. You never know.
That's fine, thank you.
Commissioner Richardson and then Commissioner Lepkool.
Dennis, I've heard you say several times, and I know you're speaking in general terms, but you've talked about $190,000 savings if we, accept one of these bids as opposed to continuing to employ our own custodians.
Yes.
And can you just take us through the, how you arrive at that 190,000?
Yep, I'm going to ask Dean to go ahead and do that. You have it on your list, don't you, Dean?
Well, that gets in about 3 pages into the analysis, not the $190,000 amount directly, but if I can continue with the walkthrough.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, again, going back to the first page, the summary, if you look at the year 1 amounts, those are the amounts that are transferred to the second page as the base contract amount for each of the vendors. It was necessary to calculate what the floor cleaning services were based on either the dollar rate per hour or the cost per square foot. And that required Danny and Mike Green to talk to the vendors to do some conversion with the hourly rates that were provided to a rate per square foot, I believe. There's all of those calculations and analysis is not provided here. We do have that information. But that is the second item that's listed on that page. It's described as floor services. And then the bonds are estimated at $7,000 for each vendor. And the three costs identified are summarized then in the total amount.
Can I have a question here? On the CMS, on the second page, you got 364,000, but on the first page, you have 299,000.
The CSM services bid provided a range for the consumables, which are the supplies and materials that
Oh, I
they
see
would
what you're
use.
doing. Oh, so they separated it out.
And that was
Okay.
quite a range from 35 to 65. I used the 65,000 to be safe.
Right.
Can we ask questions as you go along? Is that okay?
Sure.
So on the Service Master bid, you don't have any number in for floor services, but up on the top it says no cost provided for carpet cleaning or for stripping and waxing?
That is correct. They did not provide that information.
Okay, so,
I would not have evaluated that bid.
So what we're trying to,
no, I'm just trying to clear it so I know what I'm looking at. So that 371, 728 number doesn't include any floor care?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The next page then, the third page in, provides a summary of our personnel expenditures, which is the first item on the sheet, followed by the custodial stock or supplies that we have built into the facilities management budget, the related uniform, jacket, and towels costs, vehicle fuel, and some equipment that we had built into the requested budget. The total for those items is $551,948. The unemployment cost for the facilities custodial staff for 1 year is the $154,880 amount. And all I was trying to show here was our costs that we have into the requested budget. If those costs were removed from the budget, you'd still have the unemployment costs. So the net cost associated with that is the $397,000 amount.
Okay.
Which gives you just a rough comparison with the cost from the vendors for the bids that were provided.
Dean, could you explain the performance bonds?
I'm going to actually turn that one over to Danny. We had provided in the request for proposals that they indicate a bid or a performance bond for, I believe, labor and materials, but then also performance.
Yes.
We wanted to be sure that they were reputable firms and that they would put, I guess, some backing behind that reputation.
Okay.
And only one of the vendors actually provided an amount, but I'm not so sure that they knew what we were asking in that regard, because it was the same amount for both items.
Commissioner Lemko.
First of all, I'd like to have you refresh my mind on the last discussion that we had about this, that we had a discussion within the county commission, and it was determined that it was not the commissioner's responsibilities to make this decision, but it was going to be administrative decision to be making this. Is that not correct? And I guess that,
I think we're responsible to make this decision.
Yeah, I don't recall that conversation.
Because we shut off, if I remember, Dennis, that we had this discussion, and we shut off the discussion.
That was for 2011.
Yeah, we decided to ride it out 1 year.
No, this was
Make
just
a
a couple of
decision.
months ago.
Yeah, I remember, I know what you're talking about. We were talking about our shortfall in the current year.
Yep.
That was our decision for 2011.
I think what Herb was talking about is the custodial, some specific, we were actually presented a resolution detailing ways in which we could save money on custodial staff, and the board decided that that was a little too specific. And so we just asked Danny and his staff to find ways to.
your responsibility is not to determine which functions we will carry out or how we will pick up the trash and how often we will
okay.
dust.
That was the issue.
But you do have responsibility to
Okay.
determine what the budget is.
Okay. Well, the other question I have is, as far as the bonds are concerned, you know, to me, having a performance bond is probably not really that important as it is to have a third-party bond written by each of the insurance companies, and that's a relatively easy bond to get. A performance bond is a lot more difficult, and you have to be able to prove their financial abilities and all that kind of stuff. And $7,000, I don't think is enough money. And personally, I don't think we need it. I think that's a budget item that we could take out of there and we could save. It's not going to do us any good. Most of these contracts are written that will be a 30 or 90-day termination clause in it anyway. If they're not doing the job, we can just terminate it and get it out of it and let somebody else in here and hire somebody else in to be able to do it. So I think trying to do a performance bond is just going to be a waste of money for everybody.
Herb, I have a quite quick question. When you, obviously you spent your career or at least part of your career in this field, did, when you bid out custodial services, were you required to have any kind of bond?
No.
So
Third-party bonds was the only thing we provided, and a
Liability insurance.
third-party bond really prevents employees of the contractor from stealing from the organization.
All right, okay.
So, because usually you have a contract with the company, and that company is your first party. And then in the business, we are the second party, and the third party is the janitor that comes into your building. So the janitor's not stealing from the company, stealing from the place they are working from. So if the third-party bond is written within that insurance part of it, then that covers any theft from the company by any of the employees that are put into it. In all my years, I only had 2 in 47 years that we had to do something with. So most of the employees are all relatively honest, hardworking, and are just as much as your neighbors and my neighbors as everybody else. We did a lot of schools that we contracted out. We've gone through the same process. I understand where we're at. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially with the current employees that we have, because we have some phenomenal employees. And I'm going to strongly encourage any contractor that gets this, that they ought to be looking at hiring our employees. So.
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, based on the question that Commissioner Richardson asked earlier, how did we arrive at the $190,000? We showed you all 4 bids to give you complete information, but keep in mind that we will be recommending one of these companies in a meeting in the near future if you decide to go ahead with contracting. What we're going to be recommending is a company that is a responsive bidder, and that we believe has the opportunity to go back, and we're going to ask you for the ability to go back and negotiate some of the terms, which we think will bring down the cost. So when we say it's $190,000, if you take a middle firm here, it comes out to about $176,000. We believe there's some additional savings that we're going to be able to achieve through negotiations before finalizing an award of bid that we would bring back to you. So that's how we arrived at that number.
Okay. Any other questions of commissioners before we open up public comment?
Are you done, Dean? Do you want to just talk about the janitorial part, or do you want to talk about the facilities part? I guess, you know, where are we going on this?
I think we got to do one and the other.
Yeah, let's
You want to just?
do the janitorial right now.
That's fine.
Okay, all right. Yes.
I would like to make one note, though. We are, when you guys are considering to outsource custodial, it is not outsourcing the custodial needs. There are still some parks that we're going to be performing custodial work at that the grounds crew will assist with. So when you look through the budget, you're going to see some departments that still have custodial stock budgeted for 2012. The BOC, the Civic Center, the Civic Center baseball building that's used only during the summer, Medalley Park. So when you're looking through your budget, you're still going to see some money budgeted in there for custodial stock.
All right.
Who's cleaning that now? Is that?
The grounds,
The grounds crew's cleaning it now?
that's correct,
And they will continue to clean it?
correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We would like to open up any public comment regarding the custodial services issue with any members of the public that are here today. Does anyone wish to speak at this time?
Let's let them speak up here. Okay, is that okay with you?
Okay, we will close that part and bring it back to the board. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this presentation? Commissioner Richardson.
Well, obviously, my opposition to doing this is well known at this point. Herb Lemkel talks about, he wants to make it clear that the custodial staff will be given first crack at the jobs if we lay them all off. And while that may sound like, the right thing to do, it also just tends to highlight the fact that what we're really doing is just telling them that we don't think they deserve what we're paying them and that they ought to be willing to work for less. And at the same time, not only will they work for less, but someone will make a profit from their labor who is not making a profit from their labor now. And I don't think we're removing any portion of Danny Brown's salary or other supervisory staff who no longer has to oversee the custodians. So I'm not sure why this is thought to be such a good idea. And I also firmly believe that you do get what you pay for. I would point out that last year we laid off a custodian and they continue to do the same amount of work. This year we added the senior center to them and they continue to do the same amount of work. And the one point about the senior center, which is particularly interesting, one of these companies that bid, one of these 4 companies, had the contract on the senior center for the city. And both the people who use the senior center and the director of the senior center spent a lot of time complaining about what a terrible job. Then we told Danny Brown, figure out a way to get that work done. And they did. And almost immediately, the returns started coming in, and it was like, boy, what a great job now. Finally, the place is clean. You can see, we can see the difference. We could see it immediately. And again, I don't understand. I mean, I can understand, there are times when you have to lay people off. There are times when you have to eliminate programs. There are times you just don't have the money. But to just say, we've been getting a good job done, but we think we can get it done cheaper, so let's go ahead and give it a try. And it'll take us a couple of years to find out if it's a good idea or not, but hey, it's worth a shot, because a couple of years from now we might save a little money. So anyway.
All right, just to explain, I believe what the ground rules are from yesterday's opening and discussion regarding the budget deliberations is that our attempt is to go through all these departments and clarify questions, and we could express opinions and those kinds of things, but until we get down to all of our areas of discussion, then we come into final deliberation and discussion about the overall budget, and then try to make a decision and move forward from there. So for those in the audience, I mean, our anticipation was not to, at least unless the board corrects me at this time, to make a decision on the custodial thing, but it's more information, and then we have a discussion after we get done with all of our line items in terms of what's on the agenda. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I might.
Yes, Mr.
I'd like to at least take a little exception. I don't think there's a commissioner on this board. I don't think there's anybody on this board who is wanting to, strip away a little extra income. In the way that that's presented is as if there's an agenda here to reduce the income of the people who are working here. The fact of the matter is we don't print money. We don't make money here. We have finite resources, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the maximum benefit out of what we have. In this case, I mean, frankly, I could look at the rest of the workforce and say, would you be willing to give up your 3% to help certain people keep their jobs? And I mean, or whatever the contracted increases are within the within their contracts. I haven't heard that recommendation, so I'm thinking to myself, it can't just fall on our board as if we're trying to do something mean to the employees. So I don't think that's even, that's not a good place to start, Commissioner.
I was not suggesting that there was any kind of agenda to punish people or whatever. I understand that this is a way to save money. There are lots of ways to save money. Some of them are good ideas, some are not. On the other hand, since you have just said that it is all about the money, if I showed you that we had the money in the budget to cover, even if it is $190,000, which is questionable in itself, if I showed you, well, here's the money, and without costing anybody else anything, would you then say, well, then I could support it?
If you're talking about fund balance, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about a budgetary expenditure that shown as an expenditure that's not an expenditure.
Show me the money. I mean, I'm willing to listen. I'm totally open. I'm in their corner if that's the
Well,
case.
we will get to that, but it involves the capital improvement fund and $450,000.
It's a one-year accrual number that he's trying to point to, and,
So it's a temporary fix?
yeah, so,
Excuse me, if I could,
yes.
it's been a long time since we've gotten a 3% raise. We are all very grateful and productive county employees, but the raises have been, and we've been very fortunate to get them, 1 to 1.5%.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lemko,
So are we off from that and on to other facilities items?
if everyone's done discussing that item, we can go move on to the other options of the facilities. Commissioner Flees.
I would have to agree with Commissioner Richardson. The contracted employees are going to have no vested interest in the county facilities. Our employees have a vested interest in our facilities. They do an excellent job. I too recall on this senior citizen center, the complaints, and then after Danny's crew took it over, they couldn't believe the difference between the two. And been around government long enough that the unexpected always happen when you least expect it. And for example, if we have a pipe break, anything happens out of the ordinary other than emptying baskets, it's going to cost us additional money. They're going to come in, they're going to do a job, and like I said, they don't have any vested interest. So the little wad of paper or gum in the corner, I'll get it next week. I think the County Board of Commissioners would really be doing a disservice to the people in Grand Traverse County by not taking care of the facilities that we have invested in. And if you look at these employees that we're talking about, they're some of the lowest paid county employees we have. If we want to save some money, let's look at employees by pay rates and start axing them there. And it'd be the same difference. Like human resources, for example. Maybe we can get the Kelly girls to do it or something, you know, we'll get rid of that whole department. Well, you know what kind of mayhem we'd have there. Same as we're gonna have in the custodial field. So I am not in favor of contracting custodial services out.
All right, if I can make a remark, and then we'll go to Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Lemko. First of all, I just want to let you know that the only experience I have on this is coming from the private sector. And this is just one example. My prior employer basically went through the same process that we're trying to go through now and reduced down their expenditure budget in 1 year and decided to eliminate the custodial staff. And it took about a year, and they made a decision to go back and hire their own custodial staff because the quality of the work and the pride in the work and the trust in the people that were actually in the facility in the evening was at issue. Now Commissioner Lemkool will probably is an example of a company that probably didn't have that problem, okay? But I can't tell you what issues are out there in terms of different companies, but the only experience I have is that outsourcing, you have to understand you get what you pay for. If it's a lower cost, then you may not get the value you're looking for as you expect. But on the other hand, we have $1.5 million we've got to reduce the budget with, and we can't reduce the budget without reducing people. So and we could probably, I guess in my tenure here at the county over 19 years, I think everybody could sit here and justify an argument of why we would not want to eliminate a particular position or positions in every department, and then come back and try to figure out where we're going to save the money. So that presents the challenge to the administration and to the county board that you can't reduce $1.5 million without reducing FTE. So it's one of those things that, it's what do we believe to be the path of least resistance, and what positions do you feel that we can live with and not live with, and what positions do you feel that we can bid out and save money and move on. So it's going to be a difficult challenge, and it's going to be a painful decision, as I indicated yesterday to some folks before the meeting. Well, it's good when you're here on the county commission when revenues are up and growing and everyone's happy, but when you have to cut positions and affect people's livelihoods and their family and their employment situation, those are very tough and painful decisions that we have to make because of our responsibility, and we have to feel that way. So it's not going to be an easy decision, and I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner Fleece and Commissioner Richardson, on this issue, and I haven't made up my mind up yet on this particular thing, but we have to recognize that we're going to have to make some hard decisions somewhere in the area of county government if we're going to fulfill this $1.5 million reduction. So, Commissioner Richardson.
I did do I guess they call it job shadow, where I worked along with the two women who cleaned the Hall of Justice. This one back this summer, and I asked. They invited me to do it, and I actually waited a few weeks and finally called them and said, yeah, I'd like to do it. And I said, no, this is okay. I mean, I'm not going to get you in trouble by going. And they said, no, it's fine, And then when I actually went, and who they had asked for permission was Judge Rogers. Okay. Well, what impressed me that night was the level of trust. The level of trust all the judges had, the level of trust the entire court system had. I mean, we were in all of the judges' personal offices, their chambers. All the judges have, personal bathrooms off their offices. In fact, there are 23 bathrooms in the Hall of Justice. And for those of you who don't know, I was amazed that one building could have that many bathrooms. But the point is that both the sheriff and all of the judges and many of the court employees have sent letters of support for the custodians, and a lot of that is because they are trusted. They are. We know who they are. They're doing a great job. Why would we? Why would we change that? To save a few dollars, which we may not even save. I am a small businessman. I hire people all the time for many, many years. When you hire somebody, whether or not you actually have a written contract, it is a contract. I mean, you agree to pay a certain amount of money and give a certain amount of benefits based on that employee showing up every day, doing the work they're supposed to do, doing it well, being honest, and so forth. From everything I can tell, the custodians here have all fulfilled their side of the contract. And yet we have said, that's not good enough because we can find somebody to do it cheaper. And I just think it's wrong.
Commissioner Lemkool, you have Next.
Yeah, I got numerous thoughts and ideas on this thing because I've had so many years of experience. First of all, Larry, when you refer to your past employer, they went to a national contract. If we were looking at a national contract, I would be fighting this tooth and nail. Absolutely the worst thing you can possibly do. They come in and they literally lowball it, and then they go out and contract with another contractor within the community. And that's where the disasters start to happen. These contractors are hiring their employees to work for you. They are not contract employees. They are going to be county employees, basically. It's just where they're getting their paychecks from. Same thing. They're just as committed to cleaning the facility and to be as trustworthy as you possibly can. They're just as close as our neighbors are, as everybody else is. They're the same type of people. There's not any different. We're not bringing people in, shipping them in from Detroit to come up here and clean buildings. These are our neighbors that will be going to work for us. And they will be our employees, basically, to be able to accept where they're getting their paycheck from. As far as care, I can give you samples after samples where employees went above and beyond what they were required to do to protect the buildings. One employee found a fire, called the fire department, that saved a building. Another one had found a water leak. They stayed there until the water was shut off. They helped clean up. They did everything humanly possibly that anybody else would ever expect them to do. Numerous stories throughout my career of these employees being as committed and as trustworthy as anybody else. The challenge is the difference is just where they get their paycheck from. They're still going to be committed and trustworthy to our people here in our community, within our buildings. Yes, it will take a little bit of time to gain that trust, but it will be there. And it will be the best thing that we can possibly do to be able to help to provide the best quality service to our employees. They will bring in new ideas. They will bring in new equipment. They will bring in technology that we have not seen before. There's opportunities here that they will be able to bring in to be able to do that, and we will not have to continue to buy equipment for each individual building like we have been doing. They will use the same equipment for multiple buildings. It will be moved around. We will not have a carpet cleaner in every building. We will not have a buffer in every building. You don't need that. So there's lots of ways that they're going to be finding to cut costs, not by payroll, but by technology. Thank you.
Okay, we have Commissioner Gilman and then Commissioner Maxbauer.
Commissioner Lemko actually had a couple of good points, and there is some advantage to new eyes on a job, and that's been done by the same people. I'm not. This isn't to say that the people who have been doing it efficiently for some time are not doing anything right. I'm just saying that sometimes there's an advantage there. The other thing is, it is really important to understand is just because it's somebody contracted does not make a person untrustworthy. I mean, that's, we're people. In people, there are good people and there are bad people, and they're going to go to all levels. I too have a little experience in a cleaning business, having personally cleaned the airport for nearly a year, several years back, every single night, 7 days a week, and it's hard work. I mean, there's no question about it. However, the ability to bid out is affected by the skill level involved. And frankly, it's easier to bid out those things that can be, for jobs that can be filled by people who are willing, trustworthy, willing to work hard, but may not have the educational level of our court, for example, our attorneys or our other college-trained personnel. So it's Ultimately, though, it comes down to a money situation, and we have to look at it realistically. Chairman Inman has made a very good point, and we're looking at $1.5 million we got to shave. And even if Commissioner Richardson can show me the money, he's got to show it enough so we can back it off into that area. It's going to be really hard to do that.
All right. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you spoke about Commissioner Lemkool's company, CNH, and having had decades of experience as a Shell employee who saw CNH come into our building every night for years and years and years, I will tell you that they did an absolutely outstanding job. They went above and beyond, and we did not, in all the years I was there, which was 30, and I can't recall how many decades that CNH cleaned our buildings, but I don't recall one theft. And the other thing I want to say is, we had this conversation last year, and I think we have to take into consideration a long-term view. And this is my pitch for 2-year budgets, 3-year budgets. I think we need to look out beyond just next year. And if you look over 3 years, you're talking close to $500,000 in savings. I'm not prepared to vote right now, but I think that those are some things. Well, first of all, I wanted to mention Commissioner Lemkool's, my experience with his company. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson, and then Commissioner Lemkool.
Dennis, you had a very parallel experience with this and when you were in Marquette?
Yeah, as I've told commissioners several occasions, we did this in Marquette. This was 25 years ago. And we saved money by bidding it out. I can't recall how much. But after 3 years, we went back to hire our own employees because the quality of the work was not satisfactory to the board and to the departments. And we went back and did it with employees again. I think I've mentioned that to the board a number of times. The one thing that is different in that situation was there were only 2 companies to compete in Marquette at the time. And I think that is a difference that has to be noted here. We have 4 or 5 companies that compete, and I think I'm hoping we'll get a better result. But I appreciate that opportunity to say that, but I would also like to add, Commissioner, that I think there are 2 things that I'm realistic about. First of all, I don't think we'll get the level of cleaning. I think that we may not get the same level of cleaning that we get now with the personal touches that we get now. I think that we should go into this expecting a somewhat lower level of service than what we're getting with the personal attention that we have with our employees. Secondly, as was mentioned last night by someone in the audience, there is a concern about the security issue. We do have these people that work for us kind of watch out for the facility as people come in the winter and those kinds of things. Those are issues we're going to have to address. We have to go into this with open eyes. Those are some negatives. And as Commissioner Richardson pointed out, we do have the 6 elected officials and judges who have said they don't want this, and a number of employees. So this is by no means going to be a decision that's going to be perfect or that we should go in expecting the same level of care. Now, I want to add that part of the rationale for this, I've heard it said that it's because it's the lowest paid employees or it's the easiest ones. Part of the rationale for this decision really was that I believe if we're going to have to cut staffing, that we should first look to our support service departments, because our support services departments provide service to our employees that ultimately impact service to the public. But rather than look at services immediately where we're cutting service directly to the public, I think it makes more sense to look at internal services where the impact is to our employees, but still allows us to do the work and provide a similar level of. I'd rather see us have to cut in those areas than in cutting services to the public, and that's kind of my rationale for how we came up with this. But understand there are problems.
Commissioner Lemkool.
Yeah, there can be problems, but there also can be opportunities. And one of the things is, when you're discussing it with the contractor, you decide, you can set the level of service.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I have said, that I think we over-clean our buildings. And I firmly believe that there are certain areas in our buildings that we do over-clean. And those personal services, like cleaning out the coffee pot or doing some of the niceties, they can be incorporated. All you have to do is ask the person that's going to be cleaning that building to do it.
It was
Depends
because,
on what you put into contract and how you want to word it and how you want to work with it. It's the working relationship. But the biggest thing that I wanted to tell, somebody brought up about the senior center. That's the problem of going to the lowest bidder. And I always tell my wife every time I go over the cross the Mackinac Bridge, just remember this was built by the lowest bidder. But they did an excellent job. But on the same token, the senior center had a contractor that they were very happy with, and then went to a low bid and got what they paid for. And so, and the same thing with the city, did the same thing with their restrooms. They contracted with a company, they were doing very good, stayed there for about 8 years, went to a low bid, and within 3 months, they were right back to the old contractor. So, and both of those contractors are listed in this sheet. So there are very inherent problems with just going to the lowest bidder. And so it's really important that the relationship that's developed between the contractor and the employees is a critical piece in making this thing go forward. And that's what's going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of work, and it's going to work very, very well, I think.
okay, Commissioner Max
Oh, by the way,
Bauer?
thank
Okay.
you, Chris, for your comment.
Well,
And-
it was the truth.
And ditto on my part, because we did do business with your company, you did a wonderful job. Commissioner Max Bauer and then Commissioner Henschel.
I neglected to mention, after we received that letter from Lori Wells, the director of the senior center, I did go over and speak to her personally, and she did tell me that she had one contractor and she had excellent experience. Every contractor is a little different. The other thing I wanted to mention is, Dennis, when you received those letters from the judges, did you by any chance respond and suggest they take the difference out of their budgets?
I did not, but I did talk.
I'm not kidding.
No, but I did talk to several of the judges and the sheriff and did explain to them that if we made this decision, it would be based on the fact that we're going to be saving somewhere in the area of $190,000. And the few that I talked to, the sheriff and a couple of judges, indicated, well, they have concerns that'll have to be addressed, but that they understand that's a lot of money and that we have a budget issue. So I think they were more understanding, the ones I talked to after we discussed it.
Okay, thank you.
And then just a clarification, the 190 was a combination between the city and the county.
That's correct.
So our portion,
That's correct.
part of it was going to be...
140, 150, somewhere in that area.
Okay. Commissioner Henschel.
Thank you. The issue of security keeps coming up now and then, and, some think that we're going from in-house staff to, out-of-house staff, that there's been no security problems, and now we're going to have potential security problems. The fact is, we've had an in-house theft from custodial staff a number of years ago. In the courthouse, someone stole a file off a desk, and that person's no longer around, but, the fact is, there can be security problems either way. And I'm really encouraged by Commissioner Lemkel's testimony to the decades of service that he's been involved with and only had a couple of problems. That's very encouraging. But I've gotten lots of letters from staff about the quality of service that our custodial staff does, and I have to agree with every one of them 100%. I don't have one complaint about the cleanliness and the pristineness of our buildings. We have a Cadillac of service. We really do. Unfortunately, with our budgets, we're considering whether or not we can afford a Cadillac.
Okay. Any other discussion regarding the facilities area or the custodians? Commissioner Thomas.
One thing, I like to save money as well as anybody, but I think in this case that we're being penny wise and dollar foolish.
All right. Commissioner Fleece.
As I listen to everybody around the table and some of the emails and stuff we've gotten, I wonder how our forefathers, Board of Supervisors, former Board of Commissioners, how come they were so smart that they kept our custodial staff? And here we're looking at getting rid of it. And I wonder how many years that went on. Another thing is, and I'll pick on Mr. Hewitt, lives in Monroe Center in the old general store. So, Herb, Bill's outside, it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, he's been laid off by the county, but guess what? His neighbor is a contract employee. He's got Bill's old job. Now, I suggest to you that neighbors and human beings converse and talk. Well, Bill, how much did you make? He tells him. And he thinks, geez, I'm doing the same job, because they'll compare notes. I'm doing the same job, I'm making a heck of a lot less money. And that's what's going to go on. You know, people talk, people get around, and after a while, like Dennis said, took them 3 years, but they went back to their own staff, and by then, the employees you've laid off that were good, loyal employees, they couldn't survive on unemployment, so they've taken another job, and now they're in a mix. And would they come back to the county? Probably not, because why? They're not going to trust us. And as I sat here thinking, I'm thinking, boy, how did we end up with all these employees, countywide and citywide? When I hired on the city in 1968, there were 23 cops, okay? The sheriff's department had less. There was a circuit court judge, a probate judge, just one of each, a municipal judge, and a justice of the peace, okay? There were 2 ladies that were the court clerks. Now, the city, which I disagreed with, the city commission decided we're going to get rid of some of them cops, and they did. So now I believe they're down to 28. When I retired, there was 32. But today they're down to 28. Now think about that. 1968, fast forward to 2011. Do we have more business today or not? How many employees do the court systems have today?
I couldn't tell you offhand, but,
Well, roughly.
roughly, 170.
Well, circuit court, you know, had some...
She says that's high,
That's a
so-
little high, probably 90, 70
many?
to 90.
90 from 170.
We'll say 100 for conversation. Circuit court
Just throwing
also
numbers
had
out, you
some
know.
clerks. And I'm unsure of the number, but they probably have been 2 or 3.
I'll say
So
90.
if you do the math on the whole situation, why have we got 100 court employees today? Why have the cops, after listening to the sheriff last night, we had 27 paid deputies, and 24, I believe, were contract deputies, okay? 52. And I was sitting here listening tonight and thinking about that, and I thought, why do we have all these court employees? I'd like to hear that answer someday from somebody, because I cannot believe, if you got all these cops, that they're doing so much business that we got to have all these employees to sort it out.
Well, I think.
But anyway, back to saving a buck.
Okay. All right. Back to where we were.
The custodial staff is not the place to save a buck.
All right, okay.
And I think, and I understand we're going to have to make some cuts, but I think we ought to think about our forefathers, and they couldn't have been that stupid They ran the county for a lot of years, so I think we want to be real careful here and look everything over.
All right, okay. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, Commissioner Fleece, you mentioned 1968. I graduated in 1971. There was one high school and one junior high. We had, the population was much less. And I felt compelled to mention that.
All right, no, I was going to mention that, but, okay. All right, have we concluded the discussion on the custodial issue and move on to facilities? Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I guess the only thing I have to say is, as we look at privatizing services, fact is, we can't contract for police officers. We can't contract for judges. One service that's readily available for us to contract for is janitorial services. And that's why the discussion started in the first place.
Okay. Commissioner Gilman.
We could contract for corrections. We could contract for some of the other law enforcement possibilities. I think we could look at that.
Some of it.
Some of it, yeah.
One thing, if we want to save a lot of money, that I think, well, look, how much is our security contract for the courts? 650,000?
No,
Actually.
For-
but I'm not going to
for-
say because
for
my
3
numbers
years?
are a little past Dean to give you a number.
How
much, Dean?
How much is that a year? It's, for 3 years, I think it was 650, wasn't it?
190?
We actually have it in the courthouse and Hall of Justice budget. You'll be able to reference it when you go through.
So you're saying about 190?
190 a year.
Yeah.
You know, we got along a lot of years without courthouse security, and to me, to put somebody in uniform without a weapon is like putting a toothless dog there, because the toothless dog isn't going to hurt anybody. And those guards in the uniforms, as good as they may be, somebody walks in with a gun or knife, and they're serious, they're going to do exactly as they're told. So if we're going to cut someplace, the first place I'd be cutting is courthouse security.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion regarding custodial services? All right, let's move
On facilities?
on custodial.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Now let's move on to the facility budget as a whole.
Okay.
Danny, do you have any remarks on your budget?
Not really. I was
I
hoping
think
that
we
you
were
had all
prepared,
those answers
we were
or
prepared
questions for me.
to answer questions,
Okay.
if you have questions.
Any questions on the, Commissioner Lemkool?
Yeah, a couple of things I noticed in the budget was, and particularly a brand-new facilities van, and I'm just wondering why we can't go out and buy a used van and be able to put that together. Why do we have to keep buying brand-new vehicles all the time for all of our departments? I don't know what the condition of the facilities van is and why we need to do that, but that's a $38,000 budget item in their budget.
I think it's a $28,000 budget.
Excuse me, you're right, 20, I'm inflating them like you are, Dennis.
I got one right.
I caught it.
I got one right.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of other things that, I just don't know about whether or not we absolutely have to do this year in our budget or for next year. So, I guess, awning replacement, stair treads, the locks of the jail, for $30,000. I don't know where we're at for some of these
Well,
things.
Let me,
And so, just kind of going through this.
we'd be glad to go through these line by line if you want. Let me explain what we did. We sat down, Dean and I sat down with Danny and Janice, and really went through the list one item by item. We also looked at the 5-year maintenance replacement plan. And as I told you earlier, we have been putting off replacements for quite some time simply because we didn't have the money to do that, and we were trying to get back into doing some of the more important things. Now, in terms of the van, I'm going to leave that for a second and let Danny address that issue. But I do want to point out to the commissioners that we've been listening to what you said. An example of that is in the jail, we are not going to be replacing the transport vans, but we're going to be taking the one van we have and the Suburban, and we're going to be replacing the motors and the transmission in them in an effort, because the bodies themselves are very good, in an effort to pilot, to do a kind of a pilot,
Okay.
to see how it works and how this, how we can get along with, maintaining and stretching these out. Because those are not, security vehicles like on the road, a police officer who has to go at high speeds to catch them.
In terms of the vans, I don't know, we haven't, when was the last time we replaced a vehicle for you, Danny, with a new vehicle?
Last year.
Did we do one last year?
We did have one in
So
2011.
what's the status of this vehicle that you're looking to replace? Can you tell us about it?
Capital?
Or is this the vehicle we're adding because we have one person that doesn't have a vehicle
No.
to drive?
This would replace the 1996 vehicle.
Okay, and
Van.
what's the mileage on it? Do you guys have any idea?
I think I have.
I know you
here.
talked to me about it in budget, but I can't
Yeah.
recall.
The van itself was a hand-me-down from the animal control.
Okay.
It's only got about 63,000 miles on it, but body-wise is where it's starting to fail. And when you start getting into the bigger issues of the transmissions and such, we have put some money into it. It's a great time to look at an overall plan for the county on a rental lease turn-in program also.
Yeah, for low miles like that, sure.
And I don't disagree that the van probably needs to be replaced. My question is, do we have to use a brand-new van? I mean, if you had that van originally as a hand-me-down, why can't we find
Yeah.
another used van?
You know, we've done that in the last several years
Yeah.
with public works buildings,
Yeah.
vehicles.
Yeah.
We've done it with detective vehicles.
I know we
We bought used vehicles. Danny, is that something that you would that be a possibility for
Sure.
you?
The truck that I drive was a used
Yeah.
truck. I went and bought a used.
So I guess what we're saying is we'd be
I'm
willing
just-
to modify that appropriation some and look for a used vehicle if you'd like to do
As
that.
far as all the other repairs going line by line, I think you guys have done a good job in identifying those areas. You know, I don't think we need to go through each one. You know, the picnic tables was one of them that and Jason said that was a grant. Now, I don't know when the grant came in, if we got to continue paying that, but I still have, you know, and I think it's the ambiance.
Who's going to try to get a quote on it?
He made the comment that it was a grant to pay for those picnic tables as part of the upgrade for the Twin Lakes.
No.
No, the comment there was that it was part of the access to recreation grant. It was a requirement that those picnic tables be of a certain spec, I believe.
They're handicap accessible, and
Right.
they were not included in the original waterfront redevelopment.
But, you know, but also I, thought that we ought to be looking at the ambiance from Twin Lakes. You know, it's a rustic place, and, you know, we got another department that has access picnic tables that we could help their budget by buying those and from them and putting them out there. And so those were just a couple of the questions that I asked, that I'm
Well, if you
asking.
were to go out there now, there are those types of picnic tables out there. And then go over to the Civic Center and look at the other style.
But how many years have they been there?
Well, not long, because the pavilion has only been, there for a year and a half or so. So,
Yeah, we just built it.
just built that, so.
Okay.
So to get a bird's eye view of it, you can do that. You can go out there and see what's there and then look at the other style, the one that's
But at some
handicap
point
accessible.
during these discussions, if you'd like to go over the capital items, we'd be glad to do that. I mean, I think we tried, if you look at the 2 pages in my recommendation under Schedule A, you'll see the items that were requested that we did not recommend, and then the ones that we did. You know, I'm like you, Commissioner, when I saw the awning at MSU Extension and at the Front Street Building, I said to Danny, the first thing I said was, why do we need to do this? Well, there is no seal on that door. It's wide open. The awning has been needing to be replaced for how many years now?
A long time.
It's
Yeah.
torn,
Yeah.
it's worn, and, they convinced me that, that is something we've put off for probably 4 or 5 years. And so what I'm saying is, I think it's also important as we move forward that we do try to get back on our maintenance system. So we cut out a lot of things. And you may not want to do all those, and that's certainly your prerogative. When you look at things like asphalt repairs, Danny probably had 4 or 5 asphalt repairs in there. We took only the most critical one. And we said, we're going to do one this year, we'll try to do one next year, that kind of thing. But we're glad to look at those things.
First of all, I respect yours and Danny's negotiation on this, and I'm sure it's been a real difficult thing, but I also have to agree that if we don't continue to maintain the facilities that we have, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be paying for it in the future doubly. So, I have to agree with that. My only questions was the picnic tables and the vehicle. That was
Yeah.
my biggest question.
I think we're certainly willing, if the board wants, I think we're willing to look at exploring a used van instead of that new van. I'd like Danny to go back and kind of get some idea what the costs are of used, so we could get some idea how much we could cut that appropriation, but I'm willing to look at that and try it.
All right, we are going to call on Commissioner Gilman, and if Commissioner Maxbauer wants to speak.
I've got to tell you, you
Commissioner,
really hit on something.
Bob Henschel. Okay.
You really hit on something with your lease comment, because this is one of these times where we're either in a short-term situation where revenues are down because property taxes are down, or it's semi-permanent. I'd like to think it's more short-term. But the possibility of lease and having new equipment at a lower cost, I mean, obviously, over time, it would cost us a little bit more, but what's the cost of money, as well? And also, and I'm not just on a van, but on technological types of equipment, things where the technology is improving. If we're stuck with something that's old, I mean, look, a van, for example, 4,000 miles a year on average for a 16-year-old van, that's a lease, seller's dream. They'd love to contract, something like that, and we'd probably get a pretty good deal, a pretty good rate on it. And in equipment as well, instead of making some major capital outlays, we use the money, and frankly, we're not stuck with the liability of bad equipment later on, too. So I just wanted to make a note, and I appreciate that, and that's a good suggestion.
Okay, I apologize to Commissioner Richardson. He will go next. I missed him. And then we will go to Max Bauer if she wishes to speak, Commissioner Henschel, and then Commissioner Fleece.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief. From everything I've read, speaking very generally, is that there's a real shortage of used vehicles right now, and that you can actually buy a new vehicle cheaper than a used one in some cases. And the other thing is the way we use vehicles, which is basically buy them and drive them until they absolutely drop dead, is usually, you justify the expense of a new vehicle. But, by all means, let's explore and see if we can save a little money that way.
All right, Commissioner Max Bauer, do you have a comment?
No, I have a question for
Okay.
Danny.
All right.
Danny, on the list, Schedule B, that you did not get, you asked for an outdoor security camera at the facilities shop. Why did you do that?
Well, we had an incident where there's a yellow pole. It's there for a reason, so people
Won't hit it?
Yes.
And they did.
And somebody hit it,
Uh-huh.
and I have yet to find out who was driving that truck. When it happened to my truck, not mine personal, but to the county's truck, and it put a substantial dent in the running board. But just for the fact that no one would fess up to it, kind of irritated me.
That's not good.
So I talked to Danny about it. Real world. We had one incident, and I said, it doesn't merit it for one incident.
Right.
If we were having chronic problems in an area, then I would suggest we do it, but I understand what he was reacting to, but I just didn't think it had enough merit to put in.
I was on vacation that week, so I didn't have anything to do.
You're off the list.
Lucky your timing's everything. It's only $1,400. And as I look, and going back to the picnic tables, do we need 8?
Cameras?
Could we buy 4 and then use that money for other things?
The picnic tables, Danny.
Yeah, I'm not
need
sure
8?
how many, what do we have on there? You
8.
said 8?
Yeah. I mean, do we need 4 this year?
We are going to have significant savings if we
we
go
buy-
over and purchase the picnic tables from
Say no more,
the Conservancy District.
say no more. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Henschel.
Thank you. With regards to used versus new van, it's just a simple matter of math.
Right.
Run the scenarios. As a consumer, I run the scenarios. It's never cheaper for me to drive a new vehicle because you drive it off the lot, you lose that big chunk of money. I always drive used vehicles because it makes more sense. However, at a county level, we have some buying power. We get some really good deals.
Right.
And I haven't run any specific scenarios, but from the numbers I've seen, I would imagine us buying new and driving it till it dies is the way to go, or driving it until it's, from 1997, 16
I appreciate you
years.
bringing up that point, Commissioner,
Yeah.
because we do get some pretty fantastic prices on certain vehicles through state purchasing and things like that.
So, I don't think it's up to the commission to say whether you should buy used or new. It's up to staff to run the numbers, make the best choice, just be able to defend your numbers.
And we will. It's up to you to decide how much you'll allow us to spend. I guess that's the bottom line.
Well, run some scenarios for us on what it costs for maintenance of a new versus a used.
We can do that.
There's plenty there's cars everywhere, there's fleets everywhere. They have statistics on specific models and fleet cars. We can do that. And as to the picnic tables, I've had several otherly abled friend, handicap if you want to call them that, friends over the years, and I spent several years helping a neighbor lady who was bound to a wheelchair, and I have never seen a picnic table that was not handicap accessible. I don't know what you guys are talking about. They have two ends. You pull the wheelchair up. What's the problem?
The wheelchair one has an extended piece that goes out farther than
These are specifications required by the state and federal government that we have to meet in public facilities.
They are ADA compliant.
They all have to be now.
Well, we've just never had any problems with that, so.
We have Commissioner, Commissioner Fleece and Commissioner Lundquist.
I didn't really want to say that.
Well, Rob touched on exactly what I want to talk about, and so did Dennis. Years and years ago, we bought 2 motorcycles, and we kept them for about 5 and 6 years. The maintenance on them almost broke us. Well, then we got to thinking about it, and of course, we purchased these motorcycles under the state purchasing contract. After we bought the first 2 Harleys, in 2 years, we sold them for more than we had paid for them. We bought 2 more new ones. We ended up increasing the fleet to 6, and we never had, other than oil changes, we never paid a thing for maintenance. Everything was warranty at the end of 2 years, and we had people waiting in line to purchase them. The only thing you need to do, and I think you could do this with vans, is you buy what the public is going to want, because like Rob said, we get some pretty good deals. And I think we could be driving new vehicles and
I was going
reselling
to say, I
them
think
at the end
Harleys.
of, no,
You could be
resell them
driving
at the end
Harleys.
with no maintenance costs.
So
It worked for the city.
I'm going to go look at some conversion vans, see what we can get.
Commissioner Lundquist.
One of the things that has always bothered me is when we go through budget cuts and we're in hard times, and then somebody drives up in a brand-new vehicle. That just doesn't show that we're being really conservative with what our money is. And the facilities drives up to every one of our buildings. And if we have decided that we're going to cut back on custodial staff, we're going to cut back on this budget, and then we're going to go out and buy a brand-new vehicle for facilities to be able to use it, I think that's the wrong message.
But Commissioner, I have to respectfully disagree. If we buy vehicles, and we buy a new vehicle, and we keep it for 15 or 20 years, that's not irresponsible.
Well, it's just...
I know what the perception is.
Yeah, the perception there.
Yeah.
And I look at the road commission. The road commission, all those people are out there driving brand-new vehicles. And you go, they're pleading poverty, and yet they're buying brand-new vehicles for everybody. And I just think we need to be a little more frugal about how we go about looking at this.
I would encourage commissioners that have a concern about that or want to know more, we'd welcome you to go look at Danny's vehicle fleet anytime.
Oh.
And I think you'll find that we are being frugal with them. We don't buy a lot of vehicles, and I think we keep them a long, long time.
Okay.
I think one of the questions is sometimes in the repairs, we're throwing good money bad. The vehicles are so old that we are throwing good money bad.
Yeah, that's the other issue. Yeah. Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I sit here and I listen, I think about the trucks that I drive every day. And I have a couple that are newer and I have a couple that are older. But the fact is, not unlike the county, I buy them and I drive them until the wheels fall off, But that being said, there comes a point when you're driving an old vehicle that you not only have the maintenance and the dependability to worry about, but the other thing you have is, how does this represent my business? How does this represent the county? When I pull up to Dewey's Hardware to buy something, and they can't get the side door open on the van because it's just all messed up, the latch is, or they gotta, open up the back, or they can't get both back doors open, they gotta shove it down through, or you got stuff hanging out the side because there's holes rusted in it. That doesn't represent us well either. Herb, you're worried about the perception if we're driving a new vehicle, but I worry about the perception when we're driving a bunch of junk too. And Danny absolutely runs his equipment until it doesn't go anymore. And I appreciate that. Not all that terribly long ago, I made repairs on one of those vehicles, which you folks all repaired. No one else in town would repair that vehicle. Flat would not do it.
All right. Does this conclude the discussion of facilities?
One more point.
Okay.
That was about the vehicles.
Yes.
The only thing I had in your budget that I had highlighted, Danny, on under the capital improvement thing, is at the governmental center, we talked about the median in the parking lot.
Yes.
Removing the trees, installing a trickle irrigation system, and replanting the trees. If we take the trees out, let's leave them out.
No, we changed it,
Yeah, we
Commissioner. When I talked to you the other day, what we're recommending is that we take the trees out and just put stone in there.
Okay.
We're not replacing trees.
That's not the way I
or-
read the narrative in the
Yeah,
budget.
if you look in my recommendation in the
Okay.
front, you'll see it's just take out the trees because they're dying and put in stone.
Put the stone,
That's
okay.
all.
Schedule
I
A.
will agree with that, but the way I read this in the narrative here, it was take them out, put in irrigation
Yeah.
system, and then.
That was
put
the
in new trees,
request,
and it
but
was
that
like-
wasn't what we're recommending.
All right.
Got one.
I'm assuming that's the conclusion of discussion with facilities. Of course, we can continue that discussion at a later time when we deliberate. And I want to make sure that if there's any member of the public that wishes to make a lasting remark regarding the facilities budget, they have an opportunity to talk. Midge did meet with me earlier and asked me if she could be willing to speak before that issue left the floor. So Midge, if you would like to come up, you're fine.
Thanks,
And-
Danny
or
and
Mr.
Janet.
Thank you. We'd like you at the microphone.
Yep, you have to be up here.
Public comment.
Got to give your name and fingerprints.
I got it all one minute.
Okay, Janet, say
Blood type.
Pretty soon we'll take an eye scan.
Start with those next.
Hello, I'm Midge Werner. I am an employee here at the county, and I am a Teamster steward, and I am very concerned about the custodians and the possibility of outsourcing their positions here. And I recognize the hard job you have. I mean, I've been here a long time, and I know the budget issues are the toughest I've ever seen them. But in all of the discussion that was going on, and you were talking about Mr. Lemkool's former business, which I'm assuming is not one of the ones we're looking at here, just because it's gotten such high accolades, I thought I'd make a point of saying it's not. But one thing that Herb said that I really think rings true is you don't always go to the lowest bidder. And I think you need to look at what you have here, what you know the bid is with the people here, and not go to the lowest bidder, because you know you have probably the best service you're ever going to get from the people that are here. They are loyal, good employees. They are hardworking. They are the most dedicated people you'd ever want to meet. You saw letter after letter come in, emails and letters from people that have worked with them that they felt it was important enough to take the time to send a note regarding these people. Consider it 2 bids and don't take the lowest bid. Go with the people that you know are the people that are doing the job, can do the job, and are probably doing the best job. I'm not saying if you outsource it, we won't get a good job. And I don't agree that it can be over-cleaned, but I work here day in and day out. I'm here more than I'm at home. I like my home clean, and I like my work conditions cleaned. And it's important to me that this is a clean, nice environment. Makes me feel good to come to work. It's a real positive thing for me. And to tell you the truth, I don't mind having to empty my wastebasket or move it to a different location. But because we have been short-staffed, because people have been moved around, even at this point, because of that, we're not getting the job like we have in the past. I can tell you, none of these people are cleaning out people's coffee pots for them. If there's extra things being done, they are disinfecting things, they are making things good for the rest of the employees here. We appreciate it. We want to keep the people we have. And like I say, consider it 2 bids, what you have now and another bid, and don't take the low bid. Please go with the ones that we have in hand.
All right, thank you. Any other remaining comments before we close it? Yes, Jamel.
Thanks. Jamel Anderson with Grand Traverse Central Dispatch. And actually, I wanted to just talk about a point that Commissioner Henschel made about the security issue. And it is on the other side of the possibility of theft from an employee, whether they're a contract or not. When the security issue was brought up, I was thinking about being in the building at night. We have staff here all the time, and there's a lot of times when our custodial staff kind of looks out for our staff, keeps an eye out, and they know who belongs here and who doesn't. And I recognize that if you decided to change that and we had contract employees that were here for a length of time, they may get to know people too and know who is supposed to be here and who isn't. But the staff now takes good care of everyone, and you'd be comforted to know that when I'm here really late at night, and if they're by the door, they walk out with me to make sure that I don't hurt anybody in the public. So they are a benefit to us.
All right. Anyone else in the audience before we close out that item? All right. All right, I'm going to ask the board if they'd like to take a quick recess. All right, we stand for recess. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
Everyone has this?
Yes.
Careful what you ask for.
Brought to you by Powerade Zero.
Central Dispatch 2012 budget cuts.
Okay, we are now back from recess. It is 7:40 PM. And before we start with Central Dispatch, we had an item from last night's meeting that I want to have call on Commissioner Richardson for a quick announcement.
Okay. This concerns the RMA meeting for next Wednesday night. A lot of people wanted to be able to go down to the EPA hearing in Mayfield Township, and I had a discussion with Dennis Aloya this morning. It seems like we ought to be able to cancel the meeting. I know this wasn't on the agenda, but if, I don't know, is it just an announcement, or?
Yeah, I think if the commission's generally in agreement with
If
that.
everyone's in agreement with that,
We will close that posting.
we can just push the stuff off to Ways and Means. That's important, that has to be done with this month.
Is that your recommendation, Mr. Chairman?
That is my recommendation, yes.
Good.
All right. Everybody agree with that recommendation?
Aye.
Absolutely.
All right, and
And
then,
you know what I'd
It's okay
really
with
like
you,
to see?
Jamal?
I'd like to
See
see
the entire-
all the commissioners come down to that meeting, because that in itself, our
make a
presence,
statement.
would say a lot. And I think Mr. Bott would really like
You may need to post that.
You'd have to post it and call the meeting.
Not if
You only
we're
have to
there
post
under-
it if you're going to deliberate, that's all.
Yeah.
We will probably put something up that says
Cancel.
commissioners may gather, but it's not required.
Yeah, chance gathering, but that's fine. All right. And then we have
A
already
good
done.
chance.
We've already done the resolution and gotten that signed, and we have given that to
I have them right
Commissioner
here.
Fleece to present on our behalf.
One question. Is it Mayfield Town Hall?
No, it's at the school, St.
It's
Mary's.
the gymnasium.
Yes.
Gymnasium, yeah.
All right.
Dennis, could you send us an email to that effect?
Can we get a
and
reminder as to the
place?
location on that tomorrow to all the commissioners?
We will do
We will
that.
do that.
Yeah, because I'd end up at the hall and then lost, so. Okay, thank you for your understanding on that matter. Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. We will now move on to the Central Dispatch presentation.
All right,
Get
well,
yourself introduced for the audience.
Jamel Anderson, Director, Grand Traverse 911, and Deputy Director Jason Torrey. Jason has prepared this. I was out of town yesterday, and so I'm just going to let him go ahead and comment if necessary.
Well, first off, obviously, when you're looking to cut part of the budget, it's going to be a difficult decision to take proposals for added expenditures, but as with every year, you ask for what we need, and we have set a proposal in front of you for a request, or at least a proposal for the consideration for $891,000 to implement what is going to be a countywide simulcast radio communication system. Just to clarify what a simulcast system is, it's a simultaneous broadcast system. That's what simulcast stands for. And what's important?
Jason, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Just so commissioners are clear, I asked them to put this in the budget so that we had that in front of you. It is not recommended. There is nothing recommended for this in the budget. But it's just simply because it was so much money, so I'm
Right,
sorry.
and this is something that's been ongoing and under consideration for several years, at least the enhancements to the radio system. We wanted to make sure that we kept it on the radar and on an annual basis so that we could make sure we didn't forget about it, obviously. What the third bullet point on the first page will indicate the exact, the time frame we're looking at here. In 2002, RCC did a strategic plan for emergency communications for Grand Traverse County. They recommended a number of things, including enhancements to our facility, implementation of AVL, field reporting, and a number of things. The only thing that hasn't been completed out of that strategic plan is simulcast radio system, countywide radio system. Obviously, we established a radio planning committee from Central Dispatch Policy Advisory Board in 2009. This proposal is fully supported by that committee, as well as Central Dispatch Policy Advisory Board and the local emergency planning committee. And just to give you an idea of the difference between what we have now and what we're proposing to implement, what we currently have and what we've had when I started roughly 15 years ago is a single site transmitter site called Central Tower, located roughly Roosh Road in Garfield. And we broadcast in tone, voice, and tone paging over that one particular site. Well, that was developed sometime in the 80s and was not designed to completely cover Grand Traverse County. Since then, we have sort of put Band-Aids on the system. We've implemented transmitter sites in Interlochen, Whitewater, Mapleton, and right here in downtown Traverse City, simply to cover all of Grand Traverse County, and we're still lacking in the Carlin, Fife Lake, and some parts of the Whitewater Township area. So the single-site transmitter is what we had roughly 15 years ago, and we've implemented a few Band-Aids. So a simulcast system, what that does is takes 4, 5, 6 sites, whatever your geographical area calls for, and transmits and broadcasts that over the entire, all 5 or 6 sites simultaneously. So you're saturating your geographical area with that transmission.
Additionally, I just want to clarify that when we simulcast, or when we dispatch over those other sites now, we have to dispatch twice the same call, because we can't dispatch them at the same time. We can't simulcast. So we have to dispatch over Central Tower, then we'll have to dispatch over the tower in Whitewater. So the dispatcher has to repeat everything twice for the responders, and it's not the most efficient way to do things.
Well, and that brings up the most important point to the whole thing, is it boils down to emergency communications. These are emergency communications. They're not telephones. They can't call your mom or your brother or your sister. You have to be able to communicate. And when Jamel talked about paging 2 or 3 times, let me give you an example of the hardship that creates. If we page over this tower in, say, Long Lake Township, and we broadcast a transmission for an emergency call, for a medical call in that township, that may take up to 60 seconds. Well, since we don't have a simulcast radio system in place, the responder may be in Township B, just east of there, and not able to pick up that transmission. Therefore, we have to rebroadcast over that tower in that geographical area so that the responder that may be the closest person to this particular call gets the page. Now, 60, 90 seconds, that's a long time. That's a long time in a fire, that's a long time in an EMS call. And that could be 1, 2, or possibly 3 towers that we have to page just to get the one call dispatched. Okay? Simulcast alleviates that problem. It's one tone and it's one broadcast. The increase in our call volume and the increase just in fire and EMS calls since 2006 has gone up nearly 30%. Every one of those calls, some 14,000 plus calls a year, requires us to page at least 1, usually 2 or 3 departments. And you can imagine if you're paging 2 or 3 departments on every call, and then you have to page 2 of those departments 2 or 3 times, how much radio time that takes to do. And
additionally, it prohibits the dispatcher who's putting the call out is not able to answer immediately the responders that first get the page. Now, they're broadcasting it again, so if somebody did pick it up on the first go-around, I mean, someone else can pick it up in the room if they're not too busy, but it really it shackles us from being able to do our job, and it's just not the most efficient way to do things. Should we answer questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
All right, questions. Commissioner Thomas.
You don't use any low band anymore, do you?
No,
It's all gone to...
it's all high band.
But even at that, you don't get coverage.
Right.
You've got blank spots all over the county. I remember that was the big fight when I was on the fire board when it was established.
It's improved, but where's the acceptable rate?
If you can imagine the central tower being centrally located in Grand Traverse County and drawing a perfectly round radius around it, roughly, given geographical and,
Terrain.
limitations, Fife Lake, Carlin, Long Lake, Whitewater, okay?
The corners.
All the 4 corners of the county lack in the coverage that we need. The RCC consultants performed that study in 2002 and realized that we had roughly 80% coverage, where an acceptable level would be about 95%. So there's police officers that will not make traffic stops in certain parts of this county because they know that their radio will not cover us if they needed help.
Is that...
No, we won't tell you where that is.
I already know.
I want to know if that's the seatbelt enforcement
No.
zone.
Is that tower out by Grant Town Hall used?
That's a receiver site.
That's a receiver site.
It doesn't transmit anything from there.
Okay. Is there any grant money kicking around that we could go after?
No. We did a lot of the RCC consultant recommendations were covered with grant funds, like mobile data terminals and some of our enhancements in 2005. We've made enhancements to this radio system right along the way. It helped with the interlock and the Turtle Creek towers being implemented and online. However, that stuff is not what it used to be, and it's not available like
I
it used
talked
to
to
be.
Dan Scott, who works with Homeland Security monies, and I think the appropriation he told me to this year to the state is going to be $1 million statewide. It's diminishing, and the competition for the money is really difficult.
Yeah,
So we don't see that.
It's really focused on a regional assets and regional initiatives, and our region, Region 7, for fiscal year 2012, I do believe it is, they're cutting it in half. The funding available through that grant is going to be cut in half, and then it's a competitive basis.
That's not
for
to say there
operating.
might not be some small pots of money that we might still try to look at. Jamel and I haven't talked, but, we may be able to put in a tribal grant, for example, if we can enhance what they're doing, and some small things, but for the most part, we're going to have to figure out a way to come up with this ourselves.
Right, and as Jason said, we do understand the dilemma involved in all this, but it is our responsibility to let you know what's going on, and this is not a new issue. This is from 2002. The other component that's important to remember is this is a 2002 issue. We're still facing Next Generation 911, which is an entirely different process, and being able to accept text messaging, and there's a ton of other things that we could throw on the list that we're all going to be facing very soon. So it's kind of like, it's almost like the building maintenance. If you don't keep up with things, you're going to have some problems. And we're trying to keep up and share with you what we really need to do and what the bare bones kinds of things are, because we don't want to get so far behind that we can't function.
Okay, Commissioner Gilman.
Just help me understand your design here. Why can you not simulcast right now? I mean, what is it that prevents you from doing so? Or is it because you can only transmit out one trunk?
Technology. The simulcast system requires synchronization of all those tower sites to broadcast at exactly the same time. It takes GPS technology, and it takes engineering and lots of time to set that up and make it work right.
So is the concern, and I don't mean to interrupt, but is the concern that then there'll be areas, if both towers are broadcasting at the same time and it's not mixing right, you're going to get garbled and it's going to get...
There's portion of overlap in any simulcast system. That's the whole goal of that, but and that's part of the engineering process, is to minimize that overlap, so you minimize any interference from... You can broadcast in omnidirectional, which means obviously from the center of the tower in every direction. You can point it in a manner in which you only want to establish a broadcast transmission 90 degrees. It's all engineering. So each one of those sites, right, are going to be engineered separately from each other, and then in the end they have to be timed.
In the process of doing something, are you flicking a switch? I mean, are you pressing a button? I mean, is it something where you're using a different microphone then?
To send out the dispatch now?
Well, for example, when you say you have to duplicate your dispatch. So, I mean, are you going to this microphone and going to this microphone, or
The
just...
same microphone. The dispatchers activate a tone, which is a pager on the
Okay, and
responder's
the
end.
tone activates the squelch.
Right, that goes off, and then they dispatch the call, central, whoever, have a structure fire, and they give the information, they repeat it, and then they clear with the time, then they have to go and do that again, set the next set of pagers, and go and repeat that again, as many times as they have to do that.
All right. And the other question I had was, I mean, $900,000. I mean, you've been listening, right?
We know.
Are you, is Central currently lacking any capability that they've had in the past? In other words, are there things that you've had before, but for whatever reason, upgrades in technology also sometimes bring inconveniences as well. Is there anything that Central's missing as a result of what little upgrades it's had over the years?
There's nothing that has been taken away, so to speak, as you're referring to. However, it'll be interesting to see how this narrow banding process influences our radio coverage. Because even the technical guys and the engineers that know about narrow banding are in depth with it, they say every municipality is going to be different, every radio communication system is going to be different, but it will decrease the coverage in which our current infrastructure is set up.
That's part of my concern too, and it's like going from the long waves with the lower frequencies. Right. I mean, we could reach further with a long wave. Now I understand that, because of the way FCC does things, and you try to reduce the interference from one community to the next, skip atmospheric stuff. That was one of the fears that I had when you went from the lower band to the higher band, is that you were going to lose some coverage.
And that may happen. We don't know that, and no one that is an expert in that field can tell us either.
What's a deadline for switching?
The deadline is January 1st, 2013. However, we've locally established a date of May 1st, 2012 to make the transition.
We don't want to be with the whole herd of everybody else who's trying to do it at that particular time.
That's for the narrow banding.
Yes, that's for the narrow banding.
This request does not have we need to do it. I don't mean to diminish the importance of it, but there is no deadline. There is no federal deadline in which we have to do this.
No, there's not, and we understand you've got a lot on your plates. It could be possibly a phased process.
That's what we had talked about. If there was a way that we could do it over 2 years, let's say, they feel confident they would be able to break out the work in a way that it could be done over a couple of years, which I think is probably the most practical thing for us to look at.
Right. Really, once you establish a central site that kind of serves as the hub, or at least design a plan in which you can develop the microwave paths necessary to make this work as in the end goal, you can put sites online as you can afford them. And I will also note that if you haven't seen that study, it's from 2002, so it's almost 10 years old. We have a copy of it we're willing to share with you, that the recommendation from RCC at that time was to implement a trunked digital simulcast system, and the proposed costs from that study were $8 to $11 million. So all the agencies here in Grand Traverse County, the emergency services folks, all want to stay with the VHF analog high band system because it works for us.
Is there any possibility that, thinking outside the proverbial box, have we approached any of the cell providers for any technology that they might have that could assist us in reaching a simulcast kind of goal at this time? I mean, the technology is there for, of course, the bands that they operate on, but utilizing cell towers that are already strategically placed, and perhaps if they had something in place that could help municipalities with these kind of things, I have to imagine that it's been thought about.
There's folks out there that use that technology. However, they're usually in a condensed metropolitan area in which the infrastructure is so well built that it never goes offline, and they have coverage in most any building or structure area they're in within their jurisdiction. 75% of the country still uses what we use today, 75%, because they're more rural developed areas and not the urban. We did test the cellular network when we did this 2002 study. Not to say that won't change today. However, I could tell you that most of our MDTs are offline today. Why? Because AT&T was updating 3 other towers in Grand Traverse County, and not only did they have poor service through the air card, but they couldn't get out on their cell phone. So that's the same technology that you're asking for an emergency page to be deployed across, and I don't personally feel that that's reliable.
Yeah, we've talked about it with other agencies that do use it, but it wouldn't work with us.
If you did something like that, it seems to me, keep the backup, at least the central tower, or...
Okay, we have Commissioner Wheelock and then Commissioner Richardson.
Well, obviously, I don't think we're going to find $900,000 in this budget. That being said, as everyone probably knows, I've been around this block a while, and in
There's a
Long Lake
rut
Town-
now.
In Long Lake Township, but we have a lot of dead spots in Long Lake Township. There are a lot of places you can't get out with a radio, you can't get out with a cell phone, you just simply can't do it. When the tower was added at Twin Lakes, we were able to put a receiver antenna on there, which helps units in that area talk back to central dispatch, but it doesn't help with the dispatching. If we have a marine drowning call in Long Lake, they'll automatically probably dispatch Long Battalion 10, Interlocking Battalion 4, the dive team, and, EMS. That dispatch is probably close to 2 minutes long by the time you get through all the towns and everything else. Now, they're going to dispatch that off the central tower, and then they're immediately going to start dispatching it off from Interlocking's tower. So now I've got 4 minutes from the time they start dispatching before I can call them to find out or let them know I'm on my way, or let them know if I'm on the scene. 4 minutes. That's a long time, guys. That's a long time.
Okay. Commissioner Richardson.
Pardon my general ignorance of this whole subject, but, so like what, how many calls is this like every single call you make, or just the general emergencies, or?
There are certain departments that we dispatch every call 2 times, because we have to do it off, at least 2 times, off different towers, so that everyone that is in their jurisdiction, all the responders, can get it. For instance, the Peninsula, they have a tower in Mapleton. Well, the people that live in Mapleton don't get a page unless it's off the Mapleton Tower.
So you've got to do it first to the central tower and then again to the Mapleton Tower?
Well, we use their downtown.
Or the downtown, or
right.
whatever one it is.
2 towers regardless.
2 towers, okay.
Probably 60% of the calls are dispatched 2 towers.
Probably 50%. And keep in mind that if you're paging 2 departments that both need 2 pages, so that's 4, it just depends on the scenario. You could eat up a whole lot of time doing that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, any other questions on Dennis?
Just wanted to comment. We really, Commissioner Maxbauer asked that we have this discussion tonight because she noticed it was not in the budget, although it was requested. We've talked a little bit about this. I don't have any definitive answers for you now. Jamel and I have talked a little bit. If anything, we think that perhaps these costs may come down a little bit. They may be a little bit on the high side, but we really wanted to use this opportunity. Of course, if you want to change something in the budget and start to implement this, that would be great too. But I think we want you to know that we feel pretty comfortable that we may be able to look at some options for you that may be allowed to, maybe outside this budget process, that may allow us to begin to make these improvements. A couple of ideas. First of all, one of the things we'd like to do is evaluate the tax delinquent fund once again. There may be some extra money there that we could use for this one-time expense, but also Dean and I were just talking a little bit over the last couple of days. Perhaps this is an issue with interest rates being what they are currently, that we do a 5-year bond. We may even want to look beyond and say, what else could we, this was Dean's idea, what else could we add into that bond issue? Perhaps we could go to the local fire departments. Maybe we could go to the city police. Maybe we could go to others that may need to or want to upgrade their equipment, their emergency equipment, and put together a package of $1.5 million or whatever, bond it out, and then pay it over no more than 5 years, of course. So there are a couple of options there that we certainly think we could explore to make this more viable, to get at this in the next little bit. But we did want to give them a chance to present this to you because it's something that we really do need to get working on.
As long as they proportionally pay for that bond. Thank you.
What's that?
As long as they proportionally pay for that bond. Thank you.
Well, we would assume that they would pay their share.
Commissioner Lemkool.
Yeah, you're on the same wavelength that I was thinking about, is whether or not we should either, we've done loans also, and out of some of our funds, and to be able to pay it back. So I think, that's one of the options, bonding it. Also, this could be one of those reasons why you dip into your fund balance. You don't want to, but, it's just one of those, so we need to go into that kind of a discussion to determine whether or not I know, Chris.
I know, you know, I'm going.
We're going to need 911 if you keep that off.
So,
Yes.
but I think, but Dennis, I think you're right on the money, that there's more than one ways to skin this cat to be able to
Yeah,
make a
and
determination what
if
we
there's a
gotta be able to do.
positive, if the board feels we need to pursue this,
Yeah.
I'd like an opportunity to work with Jason and Jamel and Dean and come up with a couple of options for you that would bring back to you in the upcoming months, you know.
Including some bids.
At least from my perspective, I think it's something that we need to move forward to do, but I don't believe it's part of the budget process.
Okay, any other comments on that? Any other questions regarding the central dispatch budget?
There you go.
Commissioner Wheelock?
No, Lim Cool's down there.
I'm sorry.
He's got white hair, I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry about this.
Getting close. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out why our IT costs are so high in this department compared to even what they are in 2011. In 2011, we budgeted $49,900 of IT costs. We've so far this year spent $22,094.31, and we're budgeting $68,900. Or no, that was the request.
Is that
The budget amount is
New World, the
$58,700.
maintenance contract?
You'd have
Yeah.
the New World system
We moved the maintenance contract from our...
directly to,
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Oh,
ours
okay,
to
so
theirs.
it's the New World
it's in
contract?
IT, but it's billed back directly to the central dispatch.
Okay. Well, I
That's
wasn't aware
the-
that the New World
You're
contract
actually going to
was
see
part of
this in a
that.
couple of budgets. You'll see those things moved back into the departments.
All right, any other questions? Any members of the public have questions on central dispatch?
Follow your lead.
Okay, I think we're
Thank
set.
you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you both.
We will now move on to the Commission on Aging, and want to thank Georgia Durga and James McGee for their patience over 2 days to the bitter end
They didn't have anything else to do anyway.
to
Yeah.
be with us this evening, so you have the floor.
I'm Georgia Durga, Director of Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging.
Jim McGee, the board chairman for the Commission on Aging. And I don't know if the commissioners have had a chance to read through this. I'm sure you had nothing else to do last night after being here till whatever it was. But if you've had a chance to look through this, the purpose of this letter that I prepared was to encourage you to please take some action with regard to the issue of the pay scale for our homemaker aides. And of course, we also have, we want you to take a look at the director's pay as well. You know, our budget, and of course, you know, we understand you have a problem, and I don't want to change chairs with you guys for any reason, but we are, you know, we have our own source of revenue, we have our own budget, and we don't affect your budget in any way, shape, or form except to contribute to the, on the revenue side, because we pay for some services, administrative services and that kind of thing. But this has been going on for way too long, this issue of evaluating particularly the HMAs. We started this well before 2007. Every one of the boards that's been involved in this has said, look, this there's something wrong with the pay scale for these people. And of course, you know the litany that goes through this letter about first wait for the Siegel study, and then it was, you know, all the other general economic conditions that you're faced with. But we have the resources to deal with this. We do not have, in any way, shape, or form, a budget problem at the Commission on Aging. So, you know, our point here is that we think this deserves consideration. And I understand that you're in budget discussions at this point, and that's fine, but we wanted to get this in front of you.
All right, thank you. Just a footnote, we had planned on just putting this letter in the RMA agenda just as information, as a notice to the board publicly, along with a letter that we had received from the Commission on Aging regarding the appointment process, and that will be for discussion or information only at that time. So we will defer, I believe, without working with the chairman here, we'll defer these two letters over to Ways and Means for information. I also want to disclose to them and to the board that, as you know, county commissioners can place an agenda item onto a committee of the whole, and given our rules and the opinion of Bob Cooney, a commissioner can place the issue of classifications on a committee of the whole's either that month, or they have to skip that month and the following month, so that would be the November RMA meeting. So I've asked, based on the few comments that I've received from county commissioners, that they would be more willing to have a discussion regarding classifications after we go through the budget process. So I guess as it stands now, I've asked staff to place it as an agenda item for the November RMA meeting. And if it goes somewhere, that's fine. If it doesn't, then, I understand. So, Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, I wanted to point out that the Commission on Aging Board asked our chair to come and bring this forward, and he is doing as the board requested. I also want to add that, you think that custodial staff is the lowest paid. I don't think so. I think it's homemaker aides. And these homemaker aides, I'm going to speak very briefly, but I just can't help myself. These homemaker aides almost, there's somebody almost on a daily basis that deals with a life-threatening situation. The janitorial custodial staff does not, but the homemaker aides do. They save lives, and we get story after story after story every month. If it hadn't been for the Commission on Aging, homemaker aides, and Emily, who had to go pick a lock, we might have lost another human being, but we didn't. And that story is on our Commission on Aging video for everyone to see, and I have a copy up in my mailbox, and I'll make a copy for everyone, so you understand what these homemaker aides do above and beyond their cleaning services. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Commissioner Gilman, and then Commissioner Lemko.
No.
Did you raise your hand?
Understanding, we are, of course, the oversight, but you guys manage your own budget. And is there a way that we can help you, more quickly, or
Just tell us to go ahead and do it.
Well, no, it's not quite that, it's not quite that simple.
Well,
Because
there's an
we made the
issue, there's an
decision
issue
that
of
we would
the,
not do any reclassifications, and this is going to require a reevaluation of a job description and therefore
Salaries.
the cost.
Salaries are set by the county commission.
yeah.
Okay, so the salaries are set by
One
the
of the
county commission.
services we provide is in fact.
Could we separate the classifications of the county, as far as our administration handled employees, can we separate those in the Commission on Aging? Can we allow them to manage their own employees essentially as a separate entity?
You have the ability to set up wage and salary systems in any manner that you want. I would strongly recommend that you have to maintain consistency in your systems. And I just want to be on the record on this. I support their need to reevaluate these positions, as I support the need to reevaluate positions across the county. I do not and would not recommend to you that you take one facet of county employees and look at reclassification unless you're going to look at all. Let me give you an example of what I expect will happen. The Register of Deeds will come in and say, I bring in $300,000 more than my budget costs. I have plenty of money. Let my employees be reclassified. And how you differentiate one employee from another employee who may be underpaid, I think is a very difficult thing. And I've talked this over with Jen, and we just want to be on the record. We maintain, if you do it with one, you need to do it with everybody. I'm not saying you have to approve salary increases for everybody, but I'm saying you need to be fair across the board with your employees, and everyone needs to be treated the same. I understand the dilemma or the position that they're in, but I think everyone needs that same opportunity, and I'm looking at it globally as your responsibility to all departments.
I guess the way that I see it, okay, and the way that I see the Commission on Aging is they have their, although, for example, your Register of Deeds brings in more money, it's still a function. I mean, it is a function that operates within we budget, we manage it, or we manage the revenues and the expenditures. The management, the actual management of the Commission on Aging is done by the Commission on Aging Board. Though we have an oversight capability, they manage it, they have their own revenues, they have their own budget, they have their own expenditures that they allocate, and they have their own millage to support it. I mean, they have their own,
Exactly.
And so I guess I see it as a separate thing. I don't see it as a continuation of county necessarily. And I think somebody else wants to have a little input on this.
Well, I guess it's fair to say that I understand that and respect it. I don't agree with it. I think the public sees it as all part of the county, and frankly, I think the Commission on Aging should be just as concerned as anybody else if we take their segment that's funded by a separate millage and upgrade salaries in their department because they have money, as opposed to everyone else. I'm just telling you, I expect that if you make this decision, whether it's Commission on Aging or anybody else in the county, in one segment of your employees, you are going to be doing a disservice to the agency as a whole.
Okay.
Seriously.
All right, and if you could hold, Jen, I have Commissioner Lemkool, Richardson, and Wheelock, and then we will come to you. if
And
you'd like to
me.
remark.
I've been over here waving, but you haven't looked at me.
You've been waving hard enough. All right, I got you on the list after Wheelock. All right. So now we'll go to Commissioner Lemkool.
Okay, I guess, my past remembrance of some of the budget discussions that we've had, that it's projected from your own board that in the next 5 years, you're not going to be able to meet all the needs of the community. So I'm concerned about if you've done a 5-year budget projection, where you're going to go, and whether or not you can afford to pay additional money for your employees to be able to do this.
We've done that.
So, because I see that some of the programs you've cut back on, you're not providing some programs that you did provide before. So, I think when you start looking at it and you start balancing these things, but I really agree with everybody that I think we need to put this on hold, do the discussion after we do our budgets, and then have this discussion.
All right. Commissioner Richardson.
I just had a question, and I don't know, maybe Jen could answer it, but what pay grade are the homemaker aides?
They're in an A, that's the very lowest.
Okay, so that's the same.
As far as I know,
That's the
anyways.
same as the custodians, is
We
that
have
correct?
we do have a AA.
What's
They're
that?
in an A.
Yeah.
There isn't anything lower than the county commission. I could.
There's an AA, which is
we're
lower,
below,
like a negative.
Poverty level.
A or whatever, but there is one grade lower, an AA, which is, it goes AA, A, B, C,
We
D.
have no employees in AA, though.
No, but there is an
Oh, but
AA pay grade that is
There is a grade
lower.
that exists. Oh, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I truly believe that the homemaker aides have a lot of value, and they're of value to our community, and I've contended for a long time, I'm not sure that they do get paid enough for what they do, That being said, they are county employees, and whether we talk about the fact that the Commission on Aging has their own revenue source, they manage their own budget, doesn't make any difference. They are absolutely a division of this county, and we cannot treat those county employees any different than we do any others. Trying to remember, did they end up voting to do the union thing? We talked about it
No,
6 months ago.
they're non-union at this
They chose
time.
not to. They
this
had
time.
the vote, and
yeah.
then they voted not to. If it had been that they had went ahead and completed the voting to be part of the Teamsters Union, those people could have jumped back and forth from one job to the other within the union. And the fact is, they are Grand Traverse County employees. Even though they draw their own budget, they have their own revenue source, we approve their budget, and Dean audits their budget, and he's responsible for that budget.
All right. Commission.
We simply have to treat them not different than any other county employee.
All right. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, Dennis, do we have any other departments other than Commission on Aging that is non-union?
no other departments. You have about 100 and, here I go with numbers. You have about 120 employees that are non-union, including them, I believe.
Correct.
But no other departments?
No other.
Like entire departments?
Right. I don't think so.
I don't
Our
think so.
entire department is,
Oh,
we
wait.
have 2 unionized
Excuse
employees.
me, that's correct. Greg's back there raising his hand. Greg, is it family court and?
Probate or both.
That's right, Greg is right. And then we have circuit court and friend of the court that are an association, they are not a union. Yeah, thank you, Greg. I apologize for not remembering.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to mention is when we were having this is the reason I asked Georgia to come.
Okay.
When I was having my report at the Commission on Aging Board, I mentioned that the county board was considering, based upon the administrator's recommendation, 2 furlough days, and if we did not get those 2 furlough days, we would perhaps move ahead with hours of 37 and a half. And Georgia commented, our employees are already at 37 and a half, not the office staff,
The field staff.
but everybody that works out in the field are already 37 and a half hours. And I had a concern, this is a non-union group, and I do not want employees that are already at 37 and a half hours a week to experience furlough days. And I wanted her here in case I did not say that correctly.
Okay.
Did I do okay?
You did okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and Jen Seaman, our Human Resource Director, do you have any remarks?
And I guess I agree with Dennis in the comments that he's already made, and I won't reiterate those. But I also want to emphasize that there could be some legal considerations that we might be aware of here if we rate or reclassify one group and not another. You're looking at possible, I mean, I haven't done any analysis with the groups, but you could be looking at gender discrimination, age discrimination, things like that that we need to be aware of. And that is why you look at the entire, and you treat everybody the same. And that's why it would be the entire county. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that there are things that we need to keep in mind with that. And also with the Commission on Aging, we do, while they manage their department, the county and the Human Resources Department does manage their health, dental, vision, life, retirement, all their benefits, in addition to the reclassifications like we do for all the county employees. So just something else to keep in mind.
Okay, and I just, again, I agree with Jen and Dennis that they should not be separated. We should keep everyone under the same guidelines, even including court classifications. And just so you know, I have made the recommendation to staff to place it on the November RMA agenda for further discussion once we get through. We have to pass the budget by our October board meeting at the end of the month. So, do you have any other items you wish to discuss with the commission?
No.
All right. Are there any other items that the board would like to discuss with the Commission on Aging?
Just
Yes,
one
Mr.
thing on
Rico.
the 37 and a half hours, I mean, you can at least, in the meantime, if help them in that way, could you not?
Well, we chose to do that on purpose because of the clientele that we serve. Lots of times they cancel, or they're in the hospital, or they're in long-term care. So if they come home unexpectedly, we can add more hours without going into an overtime situation. So it gives us some flexibility.
Gotcha.
And we do, we also work with contractors if our employees are on a medical leave or something, so we have that option too. But we give a first choice to our employees, and if we can't have any more hours through them, then we'll go to a contractor.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Georgia, for sitting through 2 nights.
2 days. Thank you. With the permission of the board, would like to hold on the Michigan State University Extension discussion. Mr. Cudley is not here, so we can either take that to the end of this meeting or to the given time, take it to the next meeting, which would be September 21st.
Mr. Chairman?
So, yes.
Did Mr. Cudney, did he indicate whether he wishes to come and speak, or?
Dennis, you're going to have to respond to that.
He was here last night.
I talked
I
with
know
him
he
last
was.
night. He was here, I think, at the request of the commission. I don't know that he has,
Okay.
you have some information on it, Commissioner?
Commissioner Richardson?
Well, I spoke with him, this must have been yesterday during the day. There was a question about the person who was, that we were, the FTE, the one FTE that we were laying off. And Dennis referred to it as the elimination of a family planning program. And I said, well, what program is that? And then Dennis told me on the phone, no, it was a family financial assistance training program. I said, well, that's not family planning, that's something entirely different.
Yeah, it's called family financial
And Dennis
planning.
agreed that it was something entirely different. Well, then when I talked to Mr. Cudney, it turned out it wasn't either of those things. It was, in fact, a parents as teachers program that, for those of us who were around a couple of years ago, the state of Michigan, when Granholm was still governor, cut this program. It was about a $250,000 program for us. We saved it, or excuse me, we extended it for 2 or 3 months, but at that point, the program died because we didn't have that kind of money. So this has continued as a very small program. In fact, the person who was working in that program has left and is working for Munson Hospital now. The position is vacant, and Mr. Cudney is, I don't know if happy is the right word, but he is content to leave it vacant and, allow that change or cut or whatever to be made to his budget.
It was my understanding that he is willing to accept the budget that's recommended. We worked with
Fine.
him on that,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
I think he was responding to you.
Exactly, no, and that's what he told me also. He was satisfied with the budget as presented.
Well, for the sake of the people in the audience, I was going to suggest that we hold on that discussion and go to the community collaborative. We have 2 members
Right.
here waiting, and it is 8:30.
Well, at least from my perspective, I'd still like to have a discussion about
Yes.
MSU extensions.
I would too.
Yeah, I don't want to,
Because
I don't want to not take it out.
So should we move that to the 22nd,
Yeah,
then,
and
our next
I
meeting?
think it's only fair that.
He is available
Pat's
to be
available.
here.
I think it's only fair that Pat's available to be
And I would
here when we
agree.
have that
Right,
discussion.
that's fine.
Okay, so we will hold on that and move that to the September 21st meeting, and we can give him notice. Now we will move on to other discussion topic items, and that is the Grand Traverse Community Collaborative. We have 2 members representing the organization. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to recluse myself from this discussion, as I feel that I might have a conflict.
Well, if your wife's the executive director, I
Yeah.
would too.
I think that qualifies.
We were hoping for
I'll
that.
honor
We
your
were
conflict.
hoping for that.
Safe thing.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Lemkool will be abstaining from discussion and vote on this matter as his wife is the executive director. Okay, get yourself introduced,
With
please.
all due
Welcome.
respect, his wife is the coordinator
Coordinator, I'm
of
sorry.
the collaborative.
Okay.
My name is Jan Warren. I'm president of the Grand Traverse Community Collaborative, and Mary Maroy is...
And I'm Mary Maroy, and I'm a member of the executive team.
First of all, having just witnessed the great care and deliberation that you have taken on just the 2 topics that I have sat in on, but I walked by here twice last night on my way to another meeting. I want to thank you as a taxpayer in Grand Traverse County for your careful consideration and willingness to listen at great length to staff members and community members that are advocating for their programs or their budgets. So thank you very, very much.
Appreciate it.
We'd also like to thank you for your support in the past. We know that your budget is challenging, to say the least. You're dealing in millions of dollars. We're asking for a fraction of that amount, but it still counts, and it's still part of your budget, and we recognize that. The community collaborative, I'm hoping you got a summary that was mailed a week or so ago. Really came into being in the early 90s, a result of some direction from the State Department of Human Services actually encouraging health and human services agencies to collaborate. A very, very good idea. And quite frankly, in this county, there was not a whole lot of that going on. Agencies operated in a vacuum. I think your memo used the term silo. There was actually competition for grants. There was not a whole lot of planning taking place in a holistic basis, looking at the community as a whole and what the needs really were. And so this impetus from the state brought these leaders together to begin to do some planning and to really begin to collaborate. Unfortunately, over the years, the state funding has declined, but also they have put such strict parameters on the expenditure of those funds and which groups of individuals and families that can be served, that it has been, for about the last 5 years, frankly, impossible for us to spend all our money, which has been tragic. I know you don't ever want to return any money to the state, and we certainly have not wanted to do that, but we've had no choice. Our coordinator position is funded primarily 99 and 9/10% by dues that the member organization pays. And you very generously have, over the years, funded $5,500 for community agencies such as the Health Department, the Sheriff's Department, prosecutor, and so on. Not the Department of Human Services, they have paid themselves. We are at a time in our region, our county, our city, our country's history that we've never faced before. The need for health and human services and the lack of funding to provide those services is very, very dramatic. And more than ever, we as human services providers have to work together.
Thank you.
No one of us has the funding to do it alone at all anymore. And we have to collaborate, and just as you have a county clerk and a county administrator to do your business, we have a collaborative coordinator to do ours. And as I said, that is primarily what our dues pay for, and the dues that you have been providing pay for.
Well, I want to clarify one thing that Jan said, and that is about the money that ends up being returned to the state. That money, it cannot be used for coordination.
Right.
If it could be, we would use it, but it is restrictive. One of the things that we did this year, and it gives you an example of the kind of business that we get involved in, is that we know that the greatest number of children who continue to be in foster care are in foster care because their parents have drug and alcohol problems. We know that the people that are in the jails in Grand Traverse County and other communities in the area are in jail because they have drug and alcohol problems. So we ended up designing a project where we would be able to provide some assistance to people who are in treatment, getting help for drug and alcohol problems, but when they end up reaching crises, that we have somebody that immediately goes in and ends up working with them to get through the crisis so that they aren't back using alcohol, that they aren't back using drugs. And we were successfully able to utilize dollars from Strong Family Safe Children that we typically would have turned back to the state. So we didn't have to turn it back. I know that you have a very tough job. You know, I served in a position where we had a budget and had to deal with budget cuts. I think that you have historically done a really good job of doing your homework and studying. We know that our $5,500 sounds like a little amount of money to us. It is a huge amount of money to you guys when you're talking about laying off staff and when you're talking about cutting people's budgets. we think that we use that money and that we potentially save the county money by keeping kids out of foster care, by providing support to people who are raising their grandkids, by supporting efforts like 211, by being a part of designing a suicide prevention program, by helping design a homeless program that serves people in our community who are homeless. That is a huge bang for the buck for $5,500. My biggest fear is that your $5,500 represents a quarter of our dues money. If we lose that amount of money, we're going to lose dues from other organizations who are going to say, if the county doesn't think it's important, we don't think it's important, and we may end up having to dissolve. And if you lose that family of human services agencies coming together to do community planning, you're really going to lose a lot. So we know you're busy. We don't want to take a lot of your time.
Okay. Does that end your presentation? Okay.
Yes.
County Commissioners, Commissioner Max Bauer and then Commissioner Richardson.
I really would like to speak in support of this program. And I'm going to tell a little story that involves Mary. And I did sit on the Department of Human Services Board when Mary was director. I also attend occasionally these community collaborative meetings just to educate myself. And one Sunday morning, I was driving through town, and I see these three teenagers on the corner of Oak and 13th. I'm on my way to Tom's from my house, and I never pick up hitchhikers, but for some reason I did. And they needed a ride over to Garfield because their car had broken down. They were living out of their car. And I hear this story about these teenagers, and I said, well, where are your parents? They kicked us out. They have, my mom's an alcoholic, and my dad does drugs, and I said, well, where do you live? Sofa to sofa, wherever I can find a place. I picked up the phone, and I called Mary at home. God love her, she answered. And
didn't have caller ID at that time.
And it was a Sunday morning, maybe she's just waking up. But I said, who do I call to help these kids? And I gave them my county commissioner card, and I said, I want to hear from you. And she could tell me, and she, because of her association with the collaborative, she could tell me where I could get these kids help. And I wrote it all down, and the kids didn't end up calling me back. And I did go over to Garfield umpteen times to try and find them because their car was broken down and sitting there, and they couldn't pick it up until they found money to pay for it. One of the kids was living out of his car. But honestly, there's got to be some kind of safety net for people like this. And $5,500.
And in support of what you're saying, Christine, one of the things that the Community Collaborative has been successful in doing is helping the community establish HelpLink, which is a storefront at the intersection of Munson and Garfield. And people can walk in and get help navigating through the human services system. It would never have happened had it not been for the Community Collaborative. There are no paid staff for this organization, for HelpLink. It is totally run by volunteers.
And one of the kids was telling me, I said, what grade are you in? And he said, I'm in 11th grade. And he said, but I don't know if I'm going to finish. And I spent the entire time on my way over to Garfield, driving slowly, trying to talk him into finish that last year. You'll never regret it. Find some way. But when these kids need help, I could have called any member of that collaborative, and I called Mary because I know her, and they would have been able to tell me how to get these kids help. So I think we get a huge bang for the buck, and I see we have a memo from Fred Kiesler saying that this is a very worthwhile organization. I have a question for Dennis. Could you ask Fred to take it out of his budget?
No.
Oh, no,
I
we
see, just
did not.
asked. Just asking.
I'd
But I
like-
would say that I want you, if I could.
I would like
Mr.
you to read the letter, if you could, please.
Sure.
For the record.
Fred says, I passed it out to all the commissioners. Fred says, I was asked to speak in behalf of this organization and the county's portions of dues for the operation of the collaborative. In case I'm not present, he thought this was happening last night. I want the commission to know that I've participated in this collaborative venture for nearly 20 years and served as the chairman for several of those years. The collaborative has been an important avenue for local human service agencies to exchange information and to see common goals for meaningful collaboration. The issue of dues was very contentious, and in 1995 and 2003, as he recalls, I discussed this issue with the board. The funding is necessary for there to be sufficient staffing to organize the meeting and to herd the various agencies to common goals. It is hard to put a value on these collaborative ventures, but I believe that it is worth the investment for the county as a whole. As I was making copies of this, I apologize, I missed the first few minutes of this, but one point that if it wasn't made, I want to make is that, Herb Lemkool has talked to me in the past about this. If our individual agencies had to make an appropriation to be a member in this, how much would it cost? And by doing it together as a county on behalf of all of our agencies, I think probably it's less expensive in the long run for us to do.
Yeah.
So that was something that I apologize if it was already spoken about, but it is something that I know our departments have some concern about.
Okay, we have Commissioner Richardson, and then we'll go to Commissioner Gilman.
You said that this $5,500 is about a quarter. Is the rest of the money then from other local agencies?
That's correct. Human Services agencies pay dues, and I think it is based upon their budget.
Size of their budget.
Except the organizations that were considered by the state to be mandatory participants pay $1,000.
Okay.
As the maximum that is paid per
okay.
agency.
Did the state used to help fund this?
The state funds, yes, the state used to help fund the coordinator position. You could use 20% of the money that they gave you to fund it, and they did that away. There's a little talk that maybe they will kick a little bit back in this year, but no commitment has been made.
Commissioner Richardson, the schools also contribute dues, both Traverse Area, or Bay Area Intermediate School District and Traverse City Public Schools.
Well, I've only been to one of these meetings, but I was impressed with the breadth and, depth of the agencies that were involved, and I know I have voted against this in the past, but because it seemed like we were already paying people to be there, and it seemed like it was sort of almost like a double dip or something, but I think I'm beginning to see more of the value of it, honestly.
Thank you.
I think the use of the term herd on Fred Kiesler's part was an excellent term, because you do pay the people to be at the meeting. You need to pay somebody to herd them together and to keep them on target and to stop any, I'm trying to think of a nice word because I know this is being televised.
Parochialism.
There you go.
That is exactly the
Well,
word.
and the agencies, when I was the representative of Human Services, Dawn McLaughlin was a huge proponent for this. I'm on the Community Action Agency Board. John Stevenson has spoken to me about this in the past and certainly participates. So.
Okay, Commissioner Gilman.
You mentioned money that you had to return to the state, and is there, obviously, the implication of the importance of the community collaborative is that it has secondary effects. In some ways, it probably helps us save money by coordinating the efforts and perhaps making it more efficient. Some of that money, are there programs that we spend money on? Are there things that we do that could be provided for through those monies that you have to return to the state? If there, in a way that makes it more fungible, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Don't you think the irony is that some of the activities and services that we can only use that money to pay are already being provided through federal dollars to a great extent, not through county dollars. But, so there is some duplication.
Well, I don't think there's any duplication with county money.
No, I'm
It's
talking
duplication
with
with other state dollars.
with other state dollars.
Let me give you a really good example, though, of how we are going to try and stop that. A couple of weeks ago, as chairperson of the Department of Human Services Board, I was in Lansing with John McLaughlin for an annual meeting. And one of the deputy directors of the Department of Human Services was speaking about, gee, we want to do so much for people in poverty and all this, and I'm thinking there, yeah, and you take away all this money that you end up giving us to do good works within our community as a group, as a collaborative, and then you stand up there and say that you want us to do good work. So I approached him afterwards and said, you say this, but you know what, you make us turn this money back in because you won't let us use it to have like a navigator program to work with people in poverty. And he looked at me and said, send me an email. So I sent him an email. I am waiting for him to tell us, you can do it. We're going to let you do it, because it was like we challenged him. You know, and if we're successful in doing this, this will potentially bring, you know, maybe $60,000, $70,000 into the county for us to be able to establish a navigator program to work with people in poverty. How wonderful would that be? We have one now, but it's totally run by volunteers. There is nobody coordinating all of the work and matching people up. But there is no duplication with county money.
Not with county, but with other state dollars, and that is the irony.
Okay, any other questions for the Community Collaborative? Okay, thank you for
Thank you
coming.
So very much. And, you know, I applaud you, and the community should applaud you for all the work and all the homework that you're putting into this.
All right, thank you for coming. Just a quick clarification to the board. Our last break was at 7:30. You wish to have a 5-minute break.
We're supposed to be done at 9.
And the other part of
I gotta go home now.
well, there was a second piece to this, is that, speaking with our county administrator, there is a meeting, I believe, next week.
With the health department.
With the health department to finalize more of the information. Right now, they don't have the depth of and the information that you're probably going to be wanting to have in terms of a discussion regarding the health building until after that meeting. So there is a suggestion, possibly, if you want to have some preliminary stuff as to where they're at right now, that'd be fine, and then maybe moving the rest of the discussion after they have their meeting to the September 21st meeting, and then that would leave us the septic treatment plant and the rural fire issue, and then hopefully we would conclude by 9:30ish or so, or 9:45, something like that. So would that be fine? So let's take.
Let's do it. No.
You want to take a break or no?
No.
All right, okay. So we will move on to the health department, and do you want to just do a snapshot report, and then we'll go forward from there?
I really don't have anything to report. We gave you a timetable last time, but...
Yes, Commissioner Maxbauer.
I did ask to have this on the agenda, and the reason I feel it's important to have this discussion during our budget process is because if we choose to move ahead with a new health department building, it's going to cost us, and he was throwing numbers out, so who knows? I believe you said like an extra $100,000 a year, something like that.
No, originally we said $100,000 when we were talking about remodeling the existing health department.
Okay.
I can't give you a number now.
But I would like to have a number or somebody to at least throw a dart on a board so that we can have an idea.
I think we can have you a number on the 21st that's based on the estimate that the architect put together.
That would be good.
Keep in mind, he feels that the bids will come in lower than that when we actually go out, and that's not, the bids are supposed to go out in September to be back to us on the 1st of October.
It's going to be bonded anyway.
Yeah, of course it will. Let's go with Commissioner Gilman.
Well, now, have we gotten our energy plan on that yet? I mean, the idea of using the...
That's part,
That's part of the whole...
They are designing that so that they put in the energy efficiencies that you talk about, and the thing that Commissioner Police brought up about water pumps or pump systems, that's being built as an alternate. or being bid as an alternate,
All right,
excuse
so
me.
is that acceptable? We'll move that to the September 21st meeting? All right. We will move on to the septic treatment plant. Commissioner Max Bauer asked that that be added to the discussion topic. Ross, could you give us an update, and then we will call on Commissioner Max Bauer.
I didn't even see him.
I think I passed out to everyone the analysis that Commissioner Max Bauer did.
Which I got from Mr. Childs
the,
this morning at the Sewer and Water Committee meeting.
That is this sheet right here?
Yes.
All right. Is that going to take 5 minutes to set up?
Oh,
All right.
all right, I'm gonna take
I was just going to go to the restroom real quick.
Yeah, me too.
All right, I'll go.
Very appropriate, as a citizen.
Okay. Okay, we will conclude public comment and move on to the septic treatment plant.
Well, I'm here to respond to questions. At the meeting this morning, Commissioner Max Bauer did not have one with revenues on it. And actually, my packet didn't have it, but some of the other packets had it. I don't know why, how that got produced, but at any rate, I had the other, which I gave you.
Thank you.
And this was the preliminary forms that we had, and you'll see on the right side of that, there were 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Those are extracted right from the business plan, and that was if you did nothing. You never changed rates, you never got rate increases in flow, and that the operating costs stayed pretty much the same. So if you look at the proposed budget, and I would give you the same comment that I gave to the Board of Public Works this morning, is that we've always had the ability to do the BPW budget, and especially the septic budget, late in the year, right in December, so that we know what revenues and what flows we've got. And we also hope to know what they are passing as far as any rate increases, special assessment, hopefully to have some other angles on whether we're going to have special waste or not. So this is all preliminary. The good news is that this morning it was reported by OMI that the rebate on the septic operating contract was $82,000 this year, which reduces their operating costs to less than $400,000 a year for operating a septic treatment plant. The other good news is that revenue-wise, compared to last year, we're $86,000 over last year's revenue through the end of August. So those are positive facts. It doesn't bring us anywhere near balance. We need to look at rates. We need to look at whether they're going to do a special assessment. And I'm actively working on trying to find special waste. And I am following about a half a dozen leads. And so hopefully we'll be able to tie one of those into a contract before the end of the year, and hopefully maybe even two. We don't know. There's a third one that they've said they would be at least 300 days from the end of June before they would be ready to move flow again. They're redoing their whole process. That would be a major contract if we're able to get it. It would completely replace what we used to get from Bay Harbor. But
Wow.
that's
Really?
really, that's far out there. We may not get it, but if we get it, that would be very positive. I am going to be planning to meet with them in the month of September, face-to-face, to see what their product is with Scott Blair and see what the potential is, because we have to be able to treat it. That's the first thing. The other good news is that we're finally getting compliance from haulers. The manifest has proved very valuable. There's been about a 35% increase in septage flow and a 35% decrease in holding tank flow. Now, that's very strange that that would happen, but we think we know why. People were classifying it as holding tank and not septage. But that's nice because the differential in rate is 8 cents a gallon. Now, we do have a new rate that's just appearing on our reports now to the Board of Public Works, and that's an 8-cent rate. And we passed that rate for people who have failed septic systems, and they're going to have them replaced. They have to take out a permit to have the septic tank system replaced, either the field or the tank, and they're allowed 2 pumps at that 8-cent rate. In the case of Elmwood Township and Sunperch, which is over at Timberlea, they had a failed system for the 26 houses that are on that system. They came and asked us for an 8-cent rate because they had taken out a permit to replace this huge septic field, the whole thing. The original projections were that they were going to be moving about 12,000 gallons. It's similar to holding tank, which is 4 cents a gallon, because they don't have a tank large enough to hold much more than every other day. They couldn't get the construction finished. We're about 33,000 gallons now at the 8-cent a rate. Compared to 4 cents a gallon for the holding tank, it's a bargain for us. They're supposed to have it finished this week. I didn't check on it today, but they were supposed to do all the electrical hookups yesterday, and hopefully they'll be on the new system by the weekend. But those are positive things. The system is running better. Running better. We also had somebody decide to put a 3-pound hammerhead into the grease line. And it completely broke the grease pump. And we were on an interim system for a while with the grease deliveries, and compliments to OMI, they were able to hook up a temporary system, move in a temporary pump, and handle the grease for that time, and we, as of this morning, they had it repaired so that we can use it. We've also ordered a brand new pump, which is one thing that we wanted to do earlier. We had ordered parts for the grease pump because we felt there were integral parts in that some of the blades and that would be the first thing to go. We never expected to find a 3-pound hammerhead through the system, but so we're back in line with that. Grease is going up. We are now doing reports for every township in the county as to who is hauled in their township by day, by hauler, by gallon. And what that's producing is we're finding a number of people who have holding tanks that have not been pumped all year. That's a little strange. They're also finding that there are some restaurants who have grease traps who have not been pumped in a year. So we expect to begin to enforce some of those. You know well that we're in the lawsuit with Gamosier, and we also will be in one with Hodek. We hope to tighten up on those. There were a lot of violations on the one, and that's the one that we're going to trial. We have a hearing coming up on that in October.
Well, Commissioner Maxbauer asked this to be on the agenda, so do you have any questions? We can go to you first.
I did, and I appreciate very much you coming. I have concerns. Primarily, it stems from the letter that I'll get it out, too much caffeine, that we received from the state of Michigan, saying that we could no longer do cash advances. And you can't really do loans, you must appropriate. That's my understanding from that letter. Is that correct?
Well, go ahead. I wanted to actually call the reporter, he didn't quite have that right. If you go based on the state, they are very concerned if you report in your audit any fund that has a deficit. What we did in terms of advancing cash to the septic fund is not a violation of any state law. That wasn't done to avoid an operating deficit. That was done to make sure that when we ended the year, there was a positive cash balance, because the county's policy, which is just good business policy, it's good financial management, is we don't want any of our funds to operate with cash deficits. I mean, that's internally, that's just not what you want to do. And we were not advancing cash in the form of a transfer, a budget transfer, or a budget appropriation, which would have been a general fund or a township expenditure. Those were simply cash advances from the county to cover a cash deficit. The article in the Record Eagle referred to that practice as being in violation of state law. That was totally incorrect. The state sent us that letter because we did end 2010 with an operating deficit in the fund, and basically that meant that the revenues were short of the expenditures. And that was why the state required us to submit a plan that in effect addressed that deficit and how we would clear or eliminate that deficit. You can't operate beyond a fiscal year. You can go sometimes 2 years, but you have to have a plan that the state agrees to. And I got the letter from the state 2 days ago. They accepted the plan that we submitted.
But the plan was simply, and this is my concern, the plan, as I recall, was to use the settlement that we got in the lawsuit to pay.
That is correct. The settlement funds that were received.
The deficit.
The settlement funds that were received this year are revenues in that fund.
Yes.
And those revenues, we did the necessary budget amendments. Those revenues, in effect, with the other operating revenues that the facility generates, will produce a very small fund balance at the end of 2011.
Okay, so we are okay for this year.
That is correct.
The thing that I wanted to point out, Commissioner, was that
Unless something breaks, but
what you said is correct, that it would have to be an appropriation, but of course the other options are other sources of revenue, from some other means would also eliminate the need for a plan. So I just wanted to be clear, it's not only appropriations, it could be different rates, it could be special assessment, it could be a whole number, special waste, it could be a number of other things that would not require a plan, but we don't have any of those in place.
What?
So if everything remains the same, in all likelihood, we will be in a position where we will have to address this again at the end of next year.
And even sooner, depending on the cash availability when we make the debt service payments that are due the end of October. I did, with the budget adjustments that I presented to Ways and Means, took into consideration that plant, when we take ownership, we have to start recognizing a depreciation expense. I factored that in to my fund balance projection at the end of the year, I think starting in August. I don't know if that's technically happened yet.
No, we have a meeting scheduled in 2 weeks on the first meeting for closing.
And until that happens, we don't officially recognize a depreciation charge, but when we start depreciating that facility, there's an additional non-cash expense that we have to take into consideration as well. But we end the year based on the revised projections that Bill and I have done with a very small fund balance.
How small?
I was projecting a $21,000 fund balance with 4 or 5 months of depreciation expense in that. If we don't take ownership of the building, the depreciation would not be recognized, and we would end the year with a larger fund balance.
You're saying 2011?
For this year.
Okay. All right. I think I need to clarify something, and that is my understanding with the communication that we received from the county administrator, who had, I believe, direct contact with the state, was that the issue was a loan is not a resolution to a debt reduction plan. And that's where the Record Eagle had received that copy of the letter, called me, and I said exactly that. How they printed it, I mean, you could take it one way or another, but I believe what they were trying to state in the article is that it is not, from the state's perspective, it's not allowable for the county to have a loan, to do a loan for a debt reduction plan.
That is absolutely correct. That was language, I had discussed that with the reporter, and he did not hear what I told him.
All right.
He wrote what he wanted to write.
Okay, the reason that I asked that this be brought to our budget meeting is because when we agreed to pay half along with townships, not every township paid their half. And if, based upon that letter, my concern is, well, first of all, I'm concerned that something's going to break, but my concern is that we are going to have to make an appropriation for that plant, and then if we do, it should be in our budget. It should be reflected. That was my concern.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a legitimate concern. I couldn't even imagine what we would budget. I have no idea what the year-end 2012 is going to look like. But if you ask me the question, do you think that if everything remains where, kind of where it's at, will we need to? I think the answer is yeah, we will. Unless we come up with another solution.
And I'd like to respond to what Commissioner Maxbauer has indicated, and just clarify that if I could, is that 3 out of the 5 townships that guaranteed the note made an advancement from their general fund for their percentage of their payment due on that November 2010 bill. The 2 remaining other townships wanted clarification on the business plan, which states as money comes in, that goes to debt service first before a loan situation occurs. So I want to make it clear that I had spoken with these township supervisors, all 5, and that it isn't an issue that they were reluctant in paying. The 3 went ahead and made the appropriation, but the 2 that withheld, they wanted clarification from the Board of Public Works that are we abiding by the business plan or aren't we abiding by the business plan, and that cash coming in should be first applied towards the debt, and then the loan would come back at once that is exhausted, and that was before we got the letter. So I want to make sure that the picture isn't painted when we walk out of here that someone assumes that 2 townships out of the 5 were reluctant not to pay. They wanted a clarification from the Board of Public Works if they were going to follow the business plan, which said cash coming in first goes against the debt service, and then the loan kicks in. All right.
And I think to that issue too, the townships in the county that have paid are to be reimbursed from that payment from the mediation.
Right.
And that's what's been taken into consideration with that small cash balance at the end of the year. The other thing that you are made aware of, and Dean and Bill are correct in this, that it does add some cost long-term, but in next year you're able to call the large bond issue and reissue it. And that's something that is going to have to be considered because you can extend that to a longer term.
Was that 013?
12.
12.
Next year.
012, the big one comes too?
012, the big one, yeah.
Oh, that makes it
And that,
prettier.
Most likely it's callable on October 31st.
yeah, it's in next year.
Of 12.
Of 12.
But
That
it's,
changes the picture.
and again, in 2005, when I was replacing Chris at that time, it was, nothing but bad news, and the plant was down, and we had to rebuild it, and we had to do this. We have now been through almost 6 years with the plant, and we'll end up the end of the year with a small cash balance. It's a lot better than what a lot of people were projecting, and especially the Record Eagle. If we can redo the bonds, there's a good potential that you will have not maybe 1 or 2 years that you might have a smaller deficit, and then it might be at a break even. So I'm not as doom and gloom, and I always like Ross's description of me as being happy
Happy
talk.
talk.
Yeah, I'm more positive.
He'll never forget that term. All right. Any
Well,
questions for Ross?
I guess,
Commissioner
I
Wheeler.
guess the one thing that absolutely blows my mind, like you said, we've been here since 2005. We're 6 years into this process, and we still don't own the building.
No.
We still do not own the building. You know, how
Who owns it?
Well,
The contractor owns it.
I can explain that, though, that the problem is until you settled the lawsuit, and we've settled it, but we still have some claims that are coming in, and we have the money set aside. That's also included in Dean's projections. And actually,
Have we gotten the checklist finished?
once we close it, we are going to have about another $35,000 worth of funds in the budget that we don't have now, because those claims are less than that.
But, you know, we still have not accepted the building and own the building because we've never got it to full completion.
Then I've got the answer. Have Gordy Fraser kick us out.
Yeah.
See if we can get evicted?
Yeah. All right, any other questions for Ross on that topic at this time?
When were the bonds
Commissioner Fleets.
callable, the big bond?
In 2012, and I think Dean's right, I'll check with
think it's
with
October.
John Axe, I think it's in the fall of 2012.
I just have one quick.
Yes, Commissioner Maxbauer.
Ross, has any plan been put in place as to where money will come from if something breaks?
Oh, I think that would be up to the townships, and I don't think that they're unwilling to step to the door. Right now, the plan that we're working on is going after another grant with EPA, and we've been told we'll get funding for it, because we had a grant that expired that we couldn't get when EPA went through with the federal government and recalled anything that hadn't been given out. So we've got support through both our senators and our congressmen, and hopefully Mike Slater is working on a grant that will put in the improvements that we've had Wade Trim look at, one of which would have prevented this problem we had with the grease trap. It's a screen for the grease trap that we didn't have.
Thank you.
The screen might have stopped a 3-pound hammerhead.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, any other comments or questions for Ross at this time? All right, thank you, Ross, for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on
So
to...
Ross, you're all done with the happy talk?
No, not really.
You heard him tonight. Better than ever.
I'm not going to change my colors.
Your table's got sandblasted today. If I get out of here in time to create a schedule, maybe I can paint them tomorrow.
All right, moving on to rural fire. Dennis, you want to explain what this is about?
Oh, this was Commissioner Maxbauer.
I'm sorry, I
Commissioner
keep bringing
Maxbauer?
this stuff up.
Okay.
Okay, the reason I brought this up is this is a Grand Traverse County employee who works, that we pay rural fire for. Actually, they pay us,
It's a
they
pass-through.
they reimburse us.
It's a pass-through.
That's just a pass.
It's a pass-through. I think it's an extremely poor arrangement. We have done it for years, and I think that it needs to stop. I think if rural fire wants this employee, then they should just go ahead and hire the employee. Our employees work for our county administrator, not for another agency. And I'm going to bring this up every year as long as it's occurring, and I'm here.
Okay. Commissioner
It
Thomas.
doesn't cost us a dime because it's just a pass-through, and it was done to give her the opportunity to have county retirement benefits.
What about legacy costs?
What?
Legacy costs. Dean?
Well, I think what Commissioner Maxbauer is referring to, when this
Retirement.
employee does have the defined benefit retirement plan, at the point in time when she would retire and this arrangement ceases to exist on the county books, it doesn't really go away because there's an unfunded liability for that retirement benefit. How you would cost that out?
Thank you for putting that into my...
How you would cost that out for one employee, we'd have to work with MERS on that, but there will be a cost after her retirement to the county that the county would retain.
Which is probably not that far from.
Well, you know, if you look in this budget, I think there's a $24,000 cost in retirement that the town, rural fire is paying this year. So they've been paying the actuarial cost based on the estimate. The one thing that I think is also troubling about this, Commissioner Fleece brought this up 4 years ago, and said, what is this? And we went through the whole history. I frankly didn't even know how we got to where we were. But the one concern I do have is that at that time, they asked us to let it go and said she would be retiring in a year and a half. Do you remember that, Commissioner Fleece?
I absolutely do, and I would echo Commissioner Maxbauer's sentiments. And not only is it the retirement portion, if that employee got into some situation, the county's on the hook.
Liability, potentially.
And we're a pretty big fish in the pond.
Bigger than the
And that employee did some actions 4 and 4.5 years ago, which were totally out of the realm of reality. And Dennis is exactly correct. That's exactly what we were told by the fire board. That employee would be retiring within a year and a half, and she's still there.
Commissioner Maxwell.
Well, this is a wonderful arrangement if you can get it. Really, why wouldn't townships say, you know what, we'll just pay, we'll reimburse you, and our employees will be technically county employees. It's just not a good way to do business. And just to let you all know, and hopefully I'll have a little support, when we actually do have our budget discussions, and when we get to the rural fire, I will be making a motion to discontinue this practice.
Okay. Commissioner Lemko.
Well, we also have 3 or 4 other employees who are in the same situation with the Michigan State Extension, that the secretaries are our employees, but they actually work for Michigan State Extension.
Well,
So, I think, technically, we got the same situation.
That's a little different situation.
There isn't anybody in the county administrative staff that has oversight on this employee we're discussing with rural fire. And I don't believe that's true with MSU.
You are correct.
Yeah.
We do have
We have some control, but not.
Well, they're county employees, and
Yeah.
they answer to us. So I think it is somewhat different, Commissioner, and I would say this, that most counties in the state have county employees that are Michigan, that work for Michigan State. So I think it's a little different situation. I don't know how some of these arrangements come about. In the past, we've honored those because they were arrangements made by previous boards. When I came here, we were providing phone systems for not-for-profits. And the county was providing them, and they were reimbursing us for the cost of phone systems. I don't know how these things happen. We discontinued them. This is the only one that I'm aware of that's still kind of out there. But I think it's important to get input from Commissioner Thomas, because he was involved in this agreement when it was set up as part of rural fire. And I think you at least have to have that discussion to understand what that background was. But it is not a situation that I think should continue. Unless there was some commitment there, you are right. They could do something, and we are going to be responsible.
Thank you for agreeing with me.
It's an unusual situation.
Dennis said that 4 years ago, to the board 4 years ago. And I think this board should be listening to him.
It's different this time.
Well, I guess the only comment that I would make, and I'm trying to remember, obviously I wasn't around when Julie went to rural fire, because that happened prior to my coming on this board. I was around, but not here. But I believe, if my memory is correct, she was a county employee before she went there.
I believe that was correct.
Well, you got me. That's way before our time.
I believe she was a county employee prior to her taking the position at rural fire. Well, actually, it was at Grand Traverse Fire before the division between rural and metro. Because she went there before the split, or just about the time of the split.
In that same-
Right in that time, anyway around it, we're talking about 15 years ago.
What happened is that even before I was on here, every year, Ross Childs wanted to cut the fire budget. we don't have to do this. And even when I was supervisor, I used to fight with him all the time.
Administrators.
You gotta help these little townships out. And he did, and it went over, and that was part of it. It made her.
Well, what happened, if my memory is correct, and, I'm a little senile some nights, but I believe what happened is the county was initially making an appropriation to the county fire system, because it was the Grand Traverse County Fire System. It operated out of the county jail.
Sheriff Weiler was the fire chief.
Chief. Jack Hilliker was the assistant chief.
Correct.
So it actually was a countywide fire system. And they had, and then when it kind of separated fire from the sheriff's department, then Julie went with fire. But she was a county employee before she went to rural fire. And at that point, what they did is the county board annually made an appropriation to the county fire system. Well, then along come the discussion about, well, why are we making appropriation to the fire system? And then the discussion came into, well, what we will do is we will fund her position. Well, then as it evolved, we no longer made an appropriation to rural fire in any fashion, but a county employee was already there. The fire service reimbursed the county for the cost of that labor and her benefits.
They did it mainly because of the benefits she was already getting.
Exactly, but she was already a county employee before this started. Whether it should continue or not, I don't know that it should, but the fact is, that's how we got here. It started out, it was a Grand Traverse County fire system. The system left the jail, became a system on its own. Julie was a county employee, she went with the system.
As a courtesy, I'd like to
You should make
send
a
a
phone
letter
call.
to Bill Sedlacek.
You should ask Bill to come in and talk about it.
Indicating what we're thinking about and giving him the opportunity to come on the 21st if he'd like to talk about it.
Probably should invite Bill and the chairman of the
And you
Rural
should
Fire
just
Board.
recheck her horizon.
I think it's Paul.
She's retiring
Well,
at the end of this year, then
I just-
we're done with it.
I'll speak my mind.
That's All right. Any more on that issue?
It's hard to do.
Do we have anything under other before we adjourn? We have we're referring 2 items to the September 21st meeting. MSU Extension and the health. Okay, we're moving to public comment, and we have totally burned out the public.
Yes.
Back there in bed.
They've thrown in the towel.
They're in bed
Quick
already,
shot to
so-
the empty chairs.
So we have no public comment, and we need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Moved by Richardson, seconded by
Somebody.
Wheelock. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, man.
I was laid out.